Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. I found out from chat that the Super Bowl is tonight. I have to compete with that. Not terribly worried. I'm pretty sure most of my audience, there's not much crossover there. Anyone want to take bets on how many on Emma not showing up to the majority report tomorrow? Anyway, so far in the sandbox, we have a whole bunch of people hanging out. We have Good for Gabby, B Cat K, Kurt, yeah, CERES person. I'm horrible with names. Soul Life found the chat. Let's see. And I think that's all in the sandbox right now that I am seeing. Welcome. Oh, my dogs are goth has hopped in. Brandy Nuance. Emergency remedial truth. One of these days. Hooligan. Gunstroke the Cybertonian. I'm not sure I've seen you in here before, so welcome. And About to Sleeps and Dan Christ. Okay, lots of people. Love you all. You're great. I have a special guest for everyone today. And because I have a special guest, I'm just going to remind you, I have that very annoying setup where I have to like put a place card in between every time I switch the screen so that you don't see the behind the scenes of me. Anyway, Bam is on my show today. He's waiting impatiently probably as I ramble on. And I'm going to be bringing him on. So we'll be back in just one moment with Bam. People. Okie doke. So you are back on stage. You are not. Oh, crap. I didn't do this right. You guys saw all of that. I was supposed to put it in studio mode and I didn't. Off to a great start. Anyway, Bam is live now.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, I gotta put it in studio mode to set it up first and then So yeah, you guys saw all of that. Not that it matters. It's not like anything personal was showing up or anything. It just looked weird. Anyway, welcome, Bam, to Left of the Box.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, please tell everyone just a little bit about yourself, or a lot, depends on what you like. I don't know.
I'm not that important. I go by Bam. It's my nickname. Live here in Southern California in LA County. Grew up in San Diego. I started getting into politics and stuff. Probably, I want to say probably like right before 9/11, like around then. And always kind of like was very interested in geopolitics, a lot of international stuff, um, kind of a lot of focus on the Middle East. And yeah, other than that, I'm pretty boring. I'm not that exciting like you guys.
Don't say that. You're plenty interesting.
Oh, and we do on the Power Report, me and Dan and everyone else that comes on. We do that every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yeah, come check us out.
Yeah, I am a regular watcher.
You are.
So I don't know if you're a regular watcher of mine, you don't have to say anything to that. I'm just saying, if you are though, then you should know what's next,
I might.
because this is your initiation, which means you get the Canadian quiz.
I'm ready.
You're ready? You're ready? Okay. So start off with the same question I ask everyone. What is a toque?
We call them beanies.
Right. Okay, we got one. Without thinking about it, what does a Canadian flag look like?
Oh, the maple leaf, red and white.
Yeah.
And there's one right behind you. So
Yeah, yeah. I know. I know. I would have laughed hysterically at you if you got that one wrong with that up there.
I think I have one somewhere. It might still be in my car. I'm not sure.
Okay. Capital of Canada?
Ottawa.
You're nailing these. Do you know how many provinces there are?
Oh, okay. I don't want to take too long. So I'm not gonna like go through like okay.
There's not enough of them to take too long.
Okay, well, okay, because I don't want to forget any. Okay, BC, uh, Alberta, Saskatchewan. Okay, okay. I'm gonna just. I don't want to take too much time. I'm gonna say 9 and 3 territories.
Very close.
Oh,
10 and 3
damn!
territories. Although the fact that you were able to name like 3 in a row is so much better than so many Americans that come on the show.
I'm a big geography guy, so
Yeah. But no, 9. Well, I could almost say 9 is okay because PEI almost doesn't even count as a province.
what didn't well, I mean, not to be morbid, but didn't was the guy that did that crazy mass shooting, was that in Prince Edward Island or no? I can't remember.
Nova Scotia.
Okay, all right. That's not funny.
And well, the ironic thing here is that you can say that and I can tell you the province and I know exactly what you're talking about because they're so rare up here.
Yeah.
Whereas
That
I'm
one was
like,
that was
you know
wild.
that mass shooting down in Florida?
Yeah, it's like which one?
Yeah. Other than Justin Trudeau, can you name a single Canadian politician?
Canadian politician, anybody?
Hmm.
Uh I gotta go with my favorite Jamaican crack smoking mayor, Rob Ford. That was my
Okay.
guy.
Yeah. He's no longer alive.
No,
So,
he's not. He
so
passed.
yeah. So I don't know if that one counts. I'm not going to let you off the hook
Oh,
yet.
okay.
He's
I
not
will
even
go with
alive.
his, I'll go with his brother Doug.
Okay. Yes. Sadly, that's usually who people will mention if they know any.
I remember I don't know his name, but I feel like I remember like a Sikh defense minister.
Well, there's a Sikh federal party leader.
Right. I wonder I don't know.
Jagmeet Singh from the NDP.
Right.
Hmm.
I was actually in Canada. This is random and I apologize. I was in
Hey, hey,
Canada.
hey. Apologies are for Canadians. You don't have to
Okay.
pander to our audience here.
I was in Vancouver and it was like election time. I don't know what elections. I think they were like local. And it kind of tripped me out because I'm watching this commercial for like this politician talking about doing programs for like the poor, like for poor children. And they like showed all the children and they were all white. And I was like, I'm in Canada. I'm in Canada.
Yeah,
Here it is.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty white up here.
Yeah, because when they show the poor kids here, it's a different hue.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on where you go to, because if you are in Toronto and stuff, it's the same stereotypes being played out.
Yeah,
Let's see. Let's see if I can get something maybe a little bit more challenging.
let's do it.
Uh-huh. You see, I have to try to think about it first because I want to make sure that I can answer the equivalent American question.
I won't test you.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's just my own standard. I'm not going to ask American questions about Canada that I don't know in reverse. I
Okay.
just think that's fair. So now I need to think of something that, is a little bit more challenging, but I know on the American side of the border. How many national languages do we have?
Two.
Okay. And you know what they are.
Yes.
Okay.
French and English.
Okay. Let's see. Uh-huh. What is the name of the Canadian Football League big event?
The Grey Cup.
Okay. Okay.
I know some teams too.
I don't know that, so I'm not going to quiz you on that one. I don't do sports. Let's see. And you know what a poutine is.
I do. I do. But okay, a poutine. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I know it's fries and gravy, but I don't know if there's like sometimes there's meat, but I know there's cheese curds.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if like any like meat is a part of it, but like some like you can like get it added.
Yes. So
Yeah.
it's the fries, gravy, and cheese curds. But, you can make all sorts of poutines. Like it's even a thing at some weddings to have a poutine bar.
Oh,
So you just
interesting.
make your own poutines. Like I've had poutines with like pulled pork and beef
Okay.
brisket and stuff. So good. So good. Um, okay, let's just try for maybe one more. Just gotta think of it. Largest city.
Toronto?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you've like nailed this. You have like the Canadian pass going on.
I was given honorary Canadian citizenship in 2014
Mm-hmm.
by someone. uh, I wouldn't say we dated necessarily. I guess we did, but she was from Red Deer, and I would just bombard her with Canada questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always kind of had a thing for Canada because it's like right there,
Mm-hmm.
and most people don't know anything about it. So I always wanted to kind of know a bit about Canada, and I would, pay attention to politics in Canada and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for, at least countries that are bordering each other to know
Exactly.
a little bit about each other. Because, like, if you go over to Europe and you ask somebody in France about the countries around them, they're going to know.
Yeah.
But so many Americans don't even know what's on the other side of the border, yet I find that so odd because of how entwined our economies, our culture, like everything is. Like
Yeah.
Americans don't understand how connected we are and why it matters and stuff. And that's why I think there should be more cross-border solidarity on the left, which is something I'm trying to go for. So,
I
uh,
agree. I remember I was in the Middle East for a time, and there were some guys from Toronto there, and we were talking politics and stuff, and they were just talking all about American politics, and I was like, I want to talk about Canadian politics, and they're like, well, let's talk about American politics. It's more exciting.
yeah, unfortunately, Canadians tend to know more about American politics than Canadian politics. Partly because it's more exciting. And a lot of Canadians seem to think it doesn't affect us too much, so it's more like just watching the show. But they
Mm,
don't realize how badly it does affect us and why we should be paying attention. But also, it's just we get a lot of our media, online, network, like all of it, a lot of our media is from the States. So we tend to see it like in the movies and the TV shows, online personalities, influencers, all that. Because there's not too many like Canadian TV shows that actually, um, what's the word when they showcase Canadian
mm.
cities and stuff. Uh, and there's not even a lot of movies that showcase Canadian cities or history or political dealings and names of politicians. And unless you're like really plugged into the news and the political news, you really don't even know what the politicians are up to.
And that's a shame because damn near all the shows and movies are filmed in Canada.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell when it's Canada. I'm like, "That's, Canada, dude, stop it." Like,
Yeah.
nowhere in America looks like that. There's no fences, that's Canada.
Yeah, it's frustrating though, because like a lot of there's movies about American history, and true, a lot of them are whitewashed. But you do get a sense of certain events that happened, and as movies are becoming more modern and up to date with actual facts, you're starting to see that. So a lot of American history is actually taught through the movies and entertainment that you guys have.
Right.
We don't have that, where there's so many fascinating and rich stories that we could be telling through movies that would be interesting. But then it's always like, oh, but would it appeal to an American audience? Because that's where the market is and stuff. And
Right.
it's like, if you tell the story right and make it intriguing enough, then yeah, why not?
There should be a Canadian Hollywood because, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, in Vancouver and Toronto, like all these places, they're filming everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a shame that there's not more Canadian stories being told. Um, I remember like there's a lot of Canadian artists that I like music wise, like a lot. But I was at a show and a guy, he was like a techno artist, and he's underneath his track, he was playing. There was like a voice, and they were speaking, and when I like listened to it, I could hear that it's like a woman talking about her experience at a residential school. And so after the show, I went, I was like, "Hey, like, what was up with that track?" Like, he was like, "Oh, that was my grandmother actually talking about it."
Mm-hmm.
And like a story like that, I mean, that translates, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah.
No, there's like just so many interesting historical things that have happened to this country that, could be made into more than a Canadian heritage moment,
Mhm.
which is our propaganda commercials that we have. It's a real thing. Canadian heritage moments. They're like
That's funny.
commercials that a piece of our heritage, and it shows a very whitewashed version of something that Canada, invented basketball or helped to invent the phone with Bell, which we're going to get into in a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Also, how Canada was founded and all this sort of stuff, or the Underground Railroad that they love to brag about. We had the Underground Railroad in Canada and stuff, but they tend to neglect that before that there was slavery in Canada. Although
Yeah,
they like to let it have a pass because Canada wasn't officially a country at that point. We were still,
yeah.
part of, but, so it was abolished before Canada was officially a country. So then they tend to say, oh, yeah, there was no slavery in Canada. But it's not even so much like they don't outright lie for the most part. They just don't mention there was.
Mm. You know what? I'm gonna let that slide. Since it wasn't a country this month, I'm gonna let it slide. Canada, you never had slavery.
Horrible stuff. Or they talk about, the Halifax explosion in some of these commercials and stuff, and how they had to rebuild and all this sort of stuff, but they don't mention about the town of African descendants and descendants of slaves and stuff like that that was completely wiped off the map, that
Oh
never got
wow.
any help.
Mm.
And that town had been destroyed actually a couple times through different ways. It's something like Africa Town, like it's actually like Africa Town or something like that, like right in the name. But it got completely wiped off the map with that explosion, and they got no help whatsoever.
Wow.
But we don't hear about that aspect of it. We just hear about, the people in Halifax and all that sort of stuff. But like even a decent movie about the Halifax explosion, I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, I never even heard of that. And I'm
What?
Canadian basically, so
Oh, you haven't heard of the Halifax explosion?
I'm gonna
No,
look it up.
it was one of the largest non-atomic explosions to ever happen.
Wow.
And it happened in the Bay. Well, why? Do you know what? Why don't we just look it up? Because you're interested, and there's probably people in my audience interested now because we've been starting to talk about it, and it is a fascinating story. So
Let's
this
do it. I'm
time,
excited.
I'm going to remember to put it into studio mode before I do this. So just a moment, folks. There, I did it properly this time. You guys didn't see me have to Google this page. But we have here the Halifax explosion, which is totally not the news that we were planning on getting on today, but you know what? We're talking about it, so here we are. So, on the morning of December 6, 1917, the French cargo ship SS Mont Blanc collided with a Norwegian vessel, SS Imo, in the harbor of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. So, the Mont Blanc, laden with high explosives, caught fire and exploded, devastating the Richmond district of Halifax. At least 1,782 people were killed, largely in Halifax and Dartmouth. By the blast, debris, fires, collapsing buildings, and an estimated 9,000 were injured. The blast was the largest human-made explosion at the time. It released the equivalent energy of roughly 2.9 kilotons of TNT. There was also a tsunami this caused because it was in the bay.
Wow.
So Mont Blanc was under orders from the French government to carry out her cargo from New York City via Halifax to Bordeaux, France. At roughly 8:45 a.m., she collided at low speed, approximately 1 knot, 1.2 mile per hour, or 1.9. Okay, we don't need to know that. With the unladen IMO chartered by. Okay, yeah, let's just get to the interesting part. The impact damaged benzol barrels and blah, blah, blah. Okay, nearly all structures. Yeah, so it took about 20 minutes after the collision for it to explode. And that's where we get our Canadian heritage moment of somebody doing like the Morse code thing out to people to stop a train from coming into town because he thought it was going to explode, and he saved all the people on that train. Nearly all structures within an 800-meter radius, including the community of Richmond, were obliterated. A pressure wave snapped trees, bent iron rails, demolished buildings, grounded vessels, including the IMO, was washed ashore by the ensuing tsunami and scattered fragments of Mont Blanc per kilometers across the harbor, Dartmouth. There was also widespread damage. A tsunami created by the blast wiped out the community of the Micmac First Nation who had lived in the Turfst Cove area for generations. So, pretty devastating. I wonder if they mention on here. Yeah, so the time the Boston Daily Globe Bazaar cuts off Halifax, 20,000 survivors destitute. Oh, blizzard cuts off Halifax.
Oh, because yeah, this happened in December, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering if they mention the town that I was mentioning. Rescue efforts, destruction, loss of life, Dartmouth. So, oh, here we go, Africaville. The Black community of Africaville on the south shores of Bedford Basin, adjacent to the Halifax Peninsula, was spared the direct force of the blast, but the shadow effect of the raised ground to the south. Africaville's small and frail homes were heavily damaged by the explosion. Families recorded the deaths of 5 residents, a combination of persistent racism and growing conviction that I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. Africville should be demolished to make way for industrial development, resulted in the people of Africville receiving no police or fire protection. They had to make do without water mains and sewer lines despite paying city taxes. They received little of the donated relief funds and none of the progressive reconstruction invested in other parts of the city after the explosion.
That's a shame.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it'd be, I think there's enough here to make a really good, interesting movie type thing.
I mean, yeah, I just watched Godzilla. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Like, damn. I mean, and I don't know if the explosion was like, I'm not sure if it was a bigger explosion than the Lebanon one, but way less people died in Lebanon. It was like 200 people or so, and this is like 1,700. That is wild.
Let's see.
If this happened in America, no matter what, they would blame somebody. Like, America has to blame somebody. It can't just be an accident.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to bring this over here for people to see, and remember to wrong button. No, this one. This one.
Oh, I was like, wait, what? That color video of it? But no, obviously.
No, I hit the wrong button again because the stop sharing and the share this tab are in the same freaking pretty much. Anyway, here's the little commercial about our heritage moment commercial about the Halifax explosion.
My God, look at that.
Yeah, thank God she's a half a mile away, huh?
She's loaded, boys. You gotta get out of here. It's full of explosives.
Children, come on.
Oh, no. No, get out of here. Vince!
We're back in the school.
Please, get these children out of here. That ship is gonna blow. No!
Mr. Coleman.
Hurry! Hurry! You gotta get these people out of here. That ship is gonna blow. The train.
What?
People, get out of here. It's gonna blow up. Mission ship on fire. Stop train. Please, God, answer.
Coleman, there's no time.
The train's coming in towards Pier 6. I've got to warn you.
Come on, Vince, come on.
There are 700 people aboard it. I've got to stop it. Come on, acknowledge.
Halifax was devastated. 9,000 wounded, 2,000 dead, including Vince Coleman, dispatcher.
Yeah. Okay. So, part of our heritage.
You know, I mean, yeah, it is pretty wild, but yeah,
Okay.
it's funny. It kind of shows like how little has happened in Canada since then because I don't think, other than World War One, like I don't think anybody in America, like anything from 1917 is forgotten here. Like there's definitely something way crazier happened
Yeah.
since then.
Okay, but how about we actually get on to what I planned on the docket,
Well,
considering we've
let
been
me
at
say
this.
thank you because you taught me something. Thank
No,
you. I
no.
appreciate that.
No, I whenever I kind of want to actually share like Canadian stories to my audience, there's a lot of Americans watching, so it's good for them to know, and a lot of Canadians don't know our history. Like it is. I've learned to take deeper dives, like when you hear, oh, this community was upset because, I remember again in, I believe it was Halifax, a hair salon posed in front of the statue of the founder with hair extensions. And the indigenous community of the area got really upset, and people were like, oh, they're just overreacting and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it's because the founder of Halifax actually put a bounty on the scalps of indigenous people in that area. And so that's in really poor taste, although the person who did the photo shoot there had no idea because we're not taught our history.
Yeah.
So that was because I read up on that too, and it was just again, Canada has a very, I remember as a kid thinking we didn't have very interesting or complex history. It was just like, oh, we're too new of a country to have much happen. But it's like, no, we have a very horrific and interesting and all sorts of things happened in this country's history that we need to know about, because it's hard to heal the wounds if we never even look
For
to see
sure.
what's damaged. Like it's
Any country that was founded by settler colonialism has a history that deserves to be investigated thoroughly
oh yeah.
because it's founded on the backs of people that were genocided basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, yes.
Yeah, because as we're about to talk about one of those settler colonial institutes here, because we look at what's happening over in Gaza right now, and it's like, well, all the same things happened in Canada over a much
For
longer period type thing. But, Canada starved Indigenous peoples, like caused intentional famines, put them on land where there was no access to actual food. They couldn't go on their hunting grounds. They needed passes in order to get off the reservations by the Indian agent. So they had to be approved to even go off of the reserves. And, then you have the residential schools, then you have the day schools, and then you have all the restrictions. And then you had the fact that Indigenous people couldn't even be represented by a lawyer when they went to court, for quite some
Jeez.
time. They weren't allowed to vote until I think the late 60s. Like, it's just,
Wow.
it is, it was intentional destruction. And so many people just, oh, Indigenous people are just living off the government and stuff of that sort. But it's like they have no idea what this government actually did to them. Like they have no concept because it's not properly taught. And then the racism is just allowed to run rampant in this country, which is actually somewhat worse than in the States. Because, like, I know in the States, it's something in the prison, it's 30% Black men, but only 15% of the population is Black, as far as I can think off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
like 13 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in Canada, 30% of the male population in prison is Indigenous. Over 40% of the female population is Indigenous. Over half of foster children are Indigenous. And they make up between 5 to 7% of the population.
Well, there it is. That's the culmination of colonialism and racism
Mm-hmm.
over decades, right there.
Yeah. It's pretty. And then I've known Canadians who are usually accepting of like newcomers, immigrants, people of different backgrounds. But then as soon as you mention like an Indigenous person, then all of a sudden you see the racism come out. It's,
Interesting.
yeah. And like all of the abuse that they deal with from the police. Like the RCMP was actually made to police Indigenous peoples to actually go and kidnap their children to take them to residential schools to keep them online. Like that was the reason why they were founded. And just to see the abuse that they go through at the hands of the police still, like there's something called Starlight Tours, which is still, it's when they would find an Indigenous person drunk on the streets or something, or not even drunk, but just, instead of taking them to jail overnight, they would take them out in the middle of nowhere in below freezing temperatures and leave them.
Oh, geez.
And many of them died because they didn't have a jacket or anything. And they were just left to freeze to death out in the middle of nowhere.
Terrible.
Yeah. Eugenics, still a huge problem. So many Indigenous peoples being made infertile through coercion, through other means. Like it's so bad. It's so bad up here that, again, people don't realize because it's not taught. I wasn't really taught about residential schools when I was school aged, even though there were still residential schools open when I was school aged.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I mean, I was in Vancouver for 5 days or something like that.
I'm going to
But
move it back to this other screen because we're not talking about what's on there. So just a
you know what?
second.
Actually, let me not even tell that story.
Let's
Let's
switch
get into
back
Israel.
momentarily.
No, I'm not even going to tell that story. We should get into the
Okay.
actual show.
Too late. We're back. Okay. In Shit, did I do this right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Too late. Tell your story.
But no, when I was there, you kind of see a lot of like First Nations representation and like, it's just different. Like you see things that remind you of Indigenous people, and at least where I was in Canada, in BC. And in America, there is nothing. Like nothing. You have to be in an area where there is a significant population. But like, in any city, like there's nothing. Like, you will not ever think that these people exist at all. Um, and I do think that Canada and Australia do a way better job of like just those people are around
Mhm.
than America does. America does
Mhm.
nothing. Like you just
Mhm.
get you do a hand turkey when you're a kid in elementary school for Thanksgiving, and you learn, and basically it's an elementary school, like
Mhm.
the Navajo and the Apache, and then like that's it. Like you don't get anything else in schooling or just in society.
Mhm. Well, there's I guess part of the problem is that helps add to the maple wash here in Canada
Mm,
because stores, companies, politicians are always so like willing to promote indigenous symbols, indigenous words. A lot of our culture comes from what we took from them.
yeah.
You know, like even Ontario is an indigenous word that people don't even know that it means sparkling water. You know, a lot of
There's an Ontario not too far from me. It's like
yeah.
30 miles that way.
Uh, so we've taken so much of their culture into ours, and it almost like it presents it as, yeah, we've somehow merged, or look how well Indigenous people are treated up here. But it's all just a farce. It's a facade because of how they're actually treated, how the government actually treats them, what the
Yeah.
history actually is. But it just kind of led to this maple wash of like, oh no, we're not a bad country because you know we'll have indigenous peoples at our ceremonies or
Mhm.
at our awards show, and we'll showcase some of their dance and stuff while we do our colonial business. And it can be very it's maple washing. That's all it is. It's a maple washing. It doesn't actually relay the true nature of the relationship between indigenous peoples and the government and just how horrible it actually is.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely doesn't it doesn't make up for anything at all.
Mhm.
But it's just different. It's just different. Like land recognitions and things like that. Like that is like something that's kind of done here. I noticed in
Mhm.
Australia it's done a lot more, but yeah,
Well, those
it's
things,
still
yeah, like those
hmm,
things I feel are important. Like
yeah,
it's important to because it's very common here, especially with politicians and stuff, to do a land acknowledgement
hmm,
before any presentation and thing of that sort. And I think that is a start. It's a start to at least remind people of the land that they're actually on, what the name actually was or is to a lot of people still.
hmm,
And, a reminder of what this country did to indigenous peoples.
right,
It is, it's important. And then it's also important that, when we have statues of prime ministers or the queen and people are objecting to them, it's important to know why people are objecting to them. Because when you look back in the past and the absolute white supremacist nature of the people who originally founded Canada or made Canada into what it is, like what their intentions actually were.
right.
We shouldn't be celebrating them.
No,
Like I'm not attached, like yes, I have a Canada flag in the background and stuff, but that's not out of pride. That's to let people know where my politics are. It is like just a locational beacon type thing. Um when I talk about stuff, but I'm not attached to Canada. Like if Canada changed its name, changed its
yeah,
flag, if it broke up into different areas, I don't care. You know,
yeah,
it's how do you treat the people on the land?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I do love Canada. I'm
Hmm.
trying to go back soon.
Well, I am very appreciative for what this country has done for me, despite the fact that it's done a lot of horrible stuff still. Being a person living with disabilities and what this country does to people on disabilities and stuff. But at the same time, I also recognize that I have it better here than I would in a lot of other countries,
For
in
sure.
most other countries. Like, even compared to the States, I'd probably be not around anymore had I grown up in the States, just given the fact that the healthcare system has saved my life about 5 times over.
Hmm.
And there's no guarantee, probably very slim chance I would have gotten that in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's way different. And obviously
Mhm.
nowhere's perfect, but like,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I'm saying Canada, like I went to the whole country. I just went to Vancouver, so that's all my Canada experience there.
It's a
But
very different experience depending on where you are because it is such a
yeah,
big country. There's so
it
many
is
different
huge.
cultures. I still
Yes.
need to make a trip out to Newfoundland to find the place where there's the French Newfie cowboys.
Okay. I'm gonna let you do that. I'm just gonna go back to Vancouver.
I, yeah, I've told this story before. I was at an airport in Alberta waiting to come back out here, and a lot of people uh, on the East Coast tend to work in the oil industry in the West, so they fly out like on the weekends and stuff like that, and stay for the week or whatever. And I was on my way home, and I saw a couple men with like the big cowboy hats, like the Curious George style cowboy hats, and they were speaking, and it's like, I think that's French, but it was with this wild accent I had never heard before. And then I found out that after Toronto, the next destination was Newfoundland. And I'm like, oh my God, that is a Newfoundland accent. They're French Newfie cowboys. I need to go to this town. Like, wherever they live, I need to know this place.
That's funny. Honestly, I tell people this all the time. The first time I ever felt American was when I was in Canada. Like I forget that I'm American. I just here I'm just black. Like that's what you are. Like you don't like your Americanism. Like here, like the American is white basically.
Mhm.
And you don't feel American. You feel like a black person in America. But there, I felt American because people just look at your ID. Oh, you're from the States? Like, yeah, I am from the States, actually. You never feel like an American person
Mhm.
here. But when I was there, it was like they weren't seeing. I mean, obviously, it's just
Yeah.
the people I interacted with, but like
Mhm.
I was being talked to as an American person, not necessarily a black person,
Hmm.
and that was a different experience.
Yeah, Jeff Wiggins actually mentioned something like that too. When he was in Toronto, people were actually able to say, "Ah, you're American, aren't you?" And he had no idea how they were able to pick up on this. But that is, I don't know what it is too, but I can be around people and just the way they talk and stuff like that. It's like, you're not from around here, are you?
Yeah, well, because it's so different, and
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, it's just like it's the same. Basically, they have no
Mhm.
idea, but it's like, no, it's different. Like
Mhm.
when I was in Vancouver, like I was in Seattle, then I went to Vancouver, and I'm like, it's different. Like you can feel that this is a different place, it's a different culture. It's the way that people interact with each other is different than America.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, I've heard stories like from friends who've gone down to the States and just the different types of interactions that they've had too. And it really does feel like there is much more of a divide. Like, yes, racism is rampant up here, but it's not quite the same as in the States.
No, no,
Like,
it's definitely not.
indigenous peoples, that's its own category of racism.
No, right.
But and history with this country, but with black people, brown people, still very racist, but from what I've gathered, not quite the same as in the States.
No, no. I advise everybody don't come here.
Well, I I went to the States not too long ago to Boston, drove there, and like I didn't get to interact with too many people. But now I'm actually worried about going into a lot of the areas of the States because on my driver's license, my gender is X because I'm non-binary.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, definitely. A cop is going to give you a hard time. I can't. I'm trying to think like where could you go and they might not, but I'm like, like maybe like Seattle, like maybe
Hmm.
Portland, but like,
Yeah,
but probably those cops too.
because my license, my passport, I got them uh, changed. Like
Mhm,
my birth certificate, even. It's
mhm,
all I'm non-binary, and all of my government paperwork now reflects that. And like hearing the story down in Florida of no longer people being allowed to change their, they have to have the gender assigned at birth on their driver's license,
mhm.
and all the horrors that brings with that. And it's like, so if people are traveling from outside of the state and they need to show ID, does where does that fall? But then just the risks and the chances, and you don't, because one of the things that I find terribly confusing about the states, and from the stories I've heard, is like each state is its own country.
In a lot of
Because
ways, yeah,
in Canada, criminal law is federal.
right.
So a crime is a crime is a crime across the country. There's not too much differences, but in the states, like you can get arrested for something that just over across the other, in the other state, is totally fine.
Well,
And so how
let
do you know all of the different laws for every state that you're going to go through? And some of them, by being a queer person, I could get in a lot of trouble for just existing.
let me tell you this. Somebody told you every state, but they lied. It's every county.
Hmm.
It is damn near every city. Because for sure, like every county is going to have different laws. My grandparents in Alabama, they lived in a dry county. They did not sell alcohol throughout the whole county. And the next county over did. So there, it's not illegal to have alcohol, but it's illegal to sell it
Mhm.
for a store, obviously a person. But no, it's definitely every county is going to have different laws, 100%. And sometimes, like even in California, like California, even Southern California, there are areas where it's going to be way more like liberal than other areas, and they're not that far from each other. It's
Mhm.
like 30 minutes. You're going to be fine with the X on your ID over here. Over there, you're not. And it's like 30 minutes away.
Mhm. Yeah. It just, because I've heard things like different stickers on your bumper, like even just something as possessing porn in some areas or a sex toy in some areas could get you in a lot of trouble depending on where you are. Like,
Possibly.
yeah. And or, and I just, how are you supposed to know if you're just traveling through a lot of these areas? Because you can only claim Canadian for so much stuff.
I feel like if you say you're Canadian, like I feel like a cop might be like, okay, like, all right, but
Well,
you
if
know,
I start speaking French, then maybe I can get away with it a little bit more.
you know what? That's what Angela Davis used to do. That got her through like the racism in Alabama, speaking French to people. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you start speaking French, you'll probably do a lot better. But honestly, we have like super asshole cops, and it might not matter, just depending on the day the cop is having.
Mhm.
But you know, you'll probably be fine. You'll probably be all right.
Yeah. Well, uh, I tend to try not to do things that would get me pulled over, but you never know.
You
You
never
never
know.
know.
You never know. Yeah.
Or, I would imagine most places I would visit, you don't need ID in order to enter the building. But that's, again, it's things that we don't think of up here because the amount of metal detectors or ID checking and stuff in order to get into certain buildings don't exist the same way up here. Like, if you go to Parliament Hill and you want to go and watch a session or something, yes, you have metal detectors, you have everything. You're not even allowed to take a pencil in with you. Like, it's because they don't want people protesting in the gallery. So you're
Yeah.
not allowed to take paper with you, pencil, nothing. Like, all of your possessions have to be left outside and you're supposed to sit there quietly, type thing.
Mhm.
And so tight security around that. But, you know, not too long ago, I could go into certain courthouses and there weren't even metal detectors.
Wow.
Like I believe that's been changing over the past decade or two, but like when I was a kid, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure they had metal detectors at the OJ trial here.
Yeah, or just like the amount of security, the amount of police presence. Because I went to Ottawa actually for Canada's 150
Mm,
because it was a big celebration. And yes, I understand the colonial history and celebrating Canada isn't necessarily something that I should be proud of doing, but it was to be part of that experience because I'm not necessarily I have a very complex relationship with this country. Because, like I said, I'm not proud to be a Canadian, but I am grateful for everything this country has been able to give me. But I still understand and recognize the horrors that it has done and continues to do, which I call it out for regularly.
mhm.
But I still just kind of wanted to be there for that event. And going there and seeing the police with guns, like long guns and stuff like that, was wild. Like, yeah, they have guns here, but they had like the long guns type thing, like the big guns, noticeable guns. And it's like, whoa, this is weird feeling. Because we just were so not used to it. And I remember watching these two police officers in the crowd, and it was so bizarre because like they were like laser focused looking out at the crowd, but then somebody would approach them and be like, hey, can I get a picture and stuff? And they'd be all of a sudden, like their whole demeanor, like, yeah, sure, come on, have a picture and stuff like that. And at one point you see this black woman in between these two white cops getting the picture done with the big guns beside them and everything looks like work. You're looking at this like, but then as soon as they turn around and leave, all of a sudden these cops snap back to it, and it's like it
That's
was like
funny.
so weird watching that.
That's funny. I remember going to LAX and seeing cops with the big like automatic whatevers, and being like, and yeah, like the American cop is just like so aggressive demeanor, and being like, that's scary. I'm gonna go that way. And and then I mean, this is I'm rambling. We should stop. Um, I remember when I was in Saudi Arabia and the cops there having their like automatic rifles, and they're like not scary at all. They're just like smoking cigarettes, talking to each other. Like, they don't want to they don't want to use that thing. They probably
Mhm.
barely know how to use it. But these guys over here, like, they can't wait to shoot somebody.
Yeah, like lots of problems with policing up here in Canada too, but it's still when contrasted to the United States, nowhere in the like we are the second worst out of the countries that are in similar economic scales and stuff. The OECD countries or something like
Yeah.
that. We're the second worst for police shootings.
Mm.
Uh, but you guys, you take the cake. Like it is by far. You're far, far, far worse. Like yes, we're second worst, but compared to you guys, it's still
I'm sure it's like way
yeah,
different.
it's nowhere comparable. But it's like
Yeah.
if you compare us to like the sixth worst police shooting country, then we look horrible. And it's the same type of problems. The vast majority of people shot or killed by the police, black, brown, and indigenous. Usually mental health crises.
Yeah, I remember reading about mental health crisis, like a police officer killed somebody having a mental health crisis in Canada. I forgot where it was, um, but it was just such a big difference than here
Mhm.
because it was such a big deal, and he's getting investigated, and there's
Mhm.
like a independent inquiry, and there's like all this stuff, and I'm like, here, that guy's getting like, you're not even gonna
Mhm.
get a promotion. It's like, oh, what'd you do today? Oh, I had to shoot this guy. Okay, cool. Just fill out the paperwork. See you tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, there are investigations that happen. They do make the news, but the sad reality is we still have a lot of them.
yeah.
And like when I've Googled it before for a different story I was doing, like, oh yeah, there was this one story I wanted to cover. And so I Googled like police shootings for mental health. And all of a sudden I saw this story and this story and this story and this story. And it's like, oh, okay, okay. Because I could only imagine as somebody who has mental health issues and who can go nonverbal under certain stresses and stuff like that, if the police were to act aggressively towards me for whatever reason when I'm not like I have no reason why they would or anything of that sort. If I'm going through some sort of mental health crisis, to have that extra level of threat thrown at me, there's a good chance I'm not walking away from that. Just given how I know how I would react. Like, not violently towards anyone else, but the reality is a lot of the people with these mental health issues weren't acting violently towards anyone else, and they still wound up dead somehow. Like, they weren't necessarily shot by the police, but fall off the balcony or something of that sort, or other ways that they were harmed in that situation. So, some areas they're trying to do a better job of, like, when it's a mental health crisis, the police aren't the ones to go and investigate, but that is a city by city situation. Like, different cities will have different programs, and some cities don't have any programs for that, and that's where you see some of the worst police violence. Like, especially looking at what's been happening in Alberta recently with all the unhoused people in their encampments and what the police have been doing to them. Is just horrendous. The amount of abuse that they inflict on the population in Toronto with unhoused people. It's, yeah.
They're probably getting their cues from American police. They're probably like, oh, let's act like that.
Have you seen the Thin Blue Line solidarity badges?
They have Canadian ones?
Well, there's Canadian ones, yes.
Oh.
But there's also solidarity ones. So it's like half American flag, half Canadian flag with a thin blue line on it.
Disgusting. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
But there are, it's basically the Canadian flag, but in gray colors or something, with a blue line just going across the middle of it.
It even looks stupid.
Yeah, it does. And some police officers have been warned that they're not supposed to wear that when they're out on duty, but some don't listen and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes you see them when the police are doing these encampment things. And yeah, a lot of our police train together. Again, this is what people don't know about our countries, and why we should be paying attention is a lot of our police forces train with American police forces. It's all the same.
Yeah. All you're going to learn is to be meaner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, it's, again, just there's so many different contrasts, even within this country, on how the police act when they act, because yes, right now in Toronto, there's an issue with how the police are treating unhoused people and all this sort of stuff. But I also remember seeing the footage from somebody went on a driving rampage, a mass killing in Toronto.
Yeah, I remember that. The incel guy.
Yeah, and you see the police take him down when he was like pretending to shoot at them, like pretending to pull something out of his pocket and shoot at them, and they still de-escalated and arrested him.
Wow. Okay.
So then you have incidences like that, but then you have an incident with another person with mental health issues who isn't a threat to anyone, who hasn't done any, wasn't just on a rampage, and yet they still wound up dead. Like, it really is. It's almost like a police officer to police officer basis here. But the reality is, it's the barrel is what's poisoning, spoiling the apples.
Yeah, no, here too, because like not every cop is going to be like some trigger happy insane person, but they're not going to stop the other guys, but like not every cop. I've dealt with cops before, and they were just regular, they were like, they weren't like turned up like that, but there's also the other ones, that are just looking to harass people and just can't wait to be aggressive, like, and I do think that's the majority. And the reality is, like, the police are a gang. Like, here, like, they operate like a gang, and especially when it comes to big cities, like, that's just another gang right there. And they're involved in all the crime. Yeah,
it is. Like, on the whole, when it comes to the Institute in general, yes, I'm all for, defund, reinvent, all that sort of stuff. But there are so many contrasts even just within our own systems here that there's no consistency, which makes it very hard to trust anyone, because
Right.
how do you know which cop is going to show up at your door if you call, or if you get pulled over? How do you know which cop you're dealing with?
Exactly.
And to have that type of stress, and then again, I get to say that because I have that privilege of being white, where I'm not generally going to have the same types of interactions as some people, because not
Yeah.
only am I white, I also don't look poor,
Mm.
because a lot of poor people, unhoused people, get harassed all the
Yeah.
time. You know, just seeing what cops do to the encampments and all that sort of stuff. But should I suddenly have a mental health crisis, that treatment might also be very different than what I would get if I was just walking down the street without any crisis at hand. It is, yeah, because it's always like a few rotten apples spoil the barrel, but it's the barrel that's causing the apples to spoil in the first place.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
the whole thing. Anyway, wow. Okay, so we've been talking like an hour. Why don't we'll check the sandbox really quickly, the chat,
Okay.
and then we'll actually get on to the news that I was planning on covering, where I might have to do like a second live stream tomorrow where it's like, so all that stuff I had planned to cover yesterday. Let's check the sandbox. Scroll up a bit. And then I have to try to find chats that are things that I know the context of, that they're not just talking to each other.
And me talking in there a bit.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Something about train culture, gossip train thing. I don't know. Let's see. Gunstroke the Cybertonian. Yeah, I learned at least a little more about Canada today. You're welcome. I try. BKK, same. Let's see. This is like the least interesting part of this stream, when I'm trying to find chats that I can at least respond to somehow. Because you can only scroll up so far too before it won't let you scroll up anymore.
True.
Yeah, Starlight Tours. Somebody is mentioning horrible history we have in this country. Danar Chris, I think is how you say their name. Last residential school all the way closed all the way back in 1997. Yeah. And then it just switched into day schools. Let's see. My dogs are goth. I agree, Sandy. It feels fake, but then I think I would be more upset if they weren't included. Probably talking about how performative the taking on of indigenous symbols and words and things of that sort. Like, so much of Canadian culture has just been stolen from indigenous peoples. Phrases that we don't even think of, like burying the hatchet. That's from indigenous peoples. Danner, Chris, Bam, you would love Newfoundland. It's a mix of Ireland, Scotland, whiskey, and they're great storytellers.
Okay.
And so now you have your next vacation destination all planned out.
We'll see.
I haven't been out to the East Coast, the Atlantic provinces, but that is somewhere I would like to go because I did a road trip when I was 17. So I went to Alberta through the States and then I came back through Canada and the person I was with, we accidentally drove into BC. So that's the furthest west that I've been. And then um, I went to Alberta a couple times a little while ago for my father's funeral and his burial, which had to be at a completely different time because frozen ground and all that sort of stuff. And that was the most northern I gone because the town
What
he lived
city?
in. Yeah,
Or like,
the town he lived in was about a 7 to 8 hour drive north of Edmonton.
geez, okay.
Yeah.
Is that the Arctic? Like, what are we doing?
Still like a 3 hour drive from the border to the Northwest Territories.
Okay,
Like
geez,
people do not understand how big this land is.
right.
It's huge. Let's say, let's just. Oh, Fadeaway X. Thank you so much for the $4 super chat. Build a wall and make DeSantis pay for it. Yeah. Let's just section off Florida. Section off Florida. Well, soon you'll need a seawall there anyway. Joking, not really.
Just might.
Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. Super appreciate it. Good for Gabby. I love maple candy. I can say yay to that. I know the context of that. Maple candy is awesome. Okay. Let's get on to the news of the day that we're planning on covering. So,
Let's do it.
I'm going to remember to hit studio mode, then set up the shop for everyone. Be right back. Transition. There we go. There. I'm getting better at this. The amount of conscious thought I have to put into this is kind of draining. But here we are on to some of the news of the day. So, from Politico, Netanyahu pushes back on international concerns about an attack on Rafah. Those of you who say under no circumstance should we enter Rafah are basically saying lose the war, the Israeli prime minister said. So, yes, after Israel has told everyone in the Gaza Strip you must move from the north to the south and targeted some of those escape routes and totally leveled northern Gaza, even after telling people, oh, yeah, sure, you'll be able to return sometime. All that sort of stuff. It's like go to the safe places in southern Gaza, and now they're being told to move from there as well because Hamas. And so, yes, evacuate Rafah. To where exactly? The mirror dimension? Like that's all that's left at this point.
Well,
Like,
yeah. Also because, like, I highly, highly doubt Egypt is going to let that many people in, and it's right on the border.
well, it's not only that. Even if they were to open up the border in that area, which I think Israel's wanting them to do, like just destroy the border or more or less there, the land that they're entering there is desert.
Right.
Like practically it's uninhabitable. So it's like, okay, you either stay in Rafah and get bombed or you get forced into the desert.
I remember, I forget what year it was, but there was like another bombing campaign happening, and they were bombing in Rafah, and Egypt wouldn't open the border, and they were just like Egyptian soldiers just like shooting at like old ladies and kids there at the border. But Netanyahu is honestly like I wonder what he is thinking is going to happen with his reputation after this war. Like, I wonder if he thinks like I'm probably going to jail in Israel, or like because there's no he has no like real solidarity from any nation, like not like true solidarity. Um, and I'm just like, what do you think is going to happen after this situation? Like,
I,
do you think that you're just going to be another like world leader and people are going to embrace you and embrace Israel? I think that Israel as a nation and Netanyahu specifically have completely destroyed whatever reputation or good faith they had on the world stage, damn near permanently at this point.
yeah, I don't like I don't know what his well, I know what his end game is, what he wants, but after there's only so many people in Gaza he can kill.
Exactly.
So what happens after so if he's successful in his campaign, which is just a horrid, horrid thought, then what? Like, does he think the people of Israel are going to appreciate him so much because now they're rid of Hamas for good, and now they have all this new land to occupy, and that he'll be raised up on a pillar or something and celebrated, and then he doesn't have to worry about going to jail or like it's not going to happen like that.
No, no,
It,
they're
it
they're protesting him every day in
mhm.
Israel.
Like I get that he's hanging on to his position as long as he can because he knows as soon as he loses it, he's going to jail
Right.
for other crimes. But this is just kind of making it worse. It's kind of like so then when he's finally no longer in his position, then this just means there's so many other crimes he's going to be charged with.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I guess he did something with the courts to try to prevent that, but I don't know
Mhm.
if that's going to help him. But I've lived through and been around for many campaigns Israel against Hamas. Um, and his idea is that the war is like the winning the war is eradicating Hamas, and that's impossible.
Mhm.
And me, like anybody that knows Israel's objectives in a war on Gaza, is they're not targeting Hamas, they're targeting civilians.
Mhm.
Like that's what they're doing. They're targeting civilians. The Hamas people are not going to be like Hamas cannot get eradicated from bombing campaigns like that. Like that's
Mhm.
just not the way it works.
Well,
So
this is guaranteeing more attacks on Israel.
100%.
Like absolutely guaranteeing because the survivors of Rafah right now, how are you not radicalized by what's happened to them?
Right.
Like it's just they are guaranteeing that they're not going to be safe in Israel.
And also it's like if you I mean, I don't know if this is the plan. I don't think so, but if they were planning to build some more settlements in Gaza, which they got rid of the settlements there in like 2005 or 2006, one of the two. If they were planning on building those again, like those people will be like in constant fear. Like there's no amount of military
Mhm.
presence you can put in Gaza to protect any settlement there.
Mhm.
And for sure, there's going to be more radicalization if they put settlements back in Gaza. Um, so I don't know if they're going to do that. I feel like that's like so stupid.
Well,
Um,
they did that with the West Bank.
they did. But I'm also like, there's also a part of me that's thinking like, as I've been saying on Power Report for the last however many months now, geez, um, there is like a regional delight from the surrounding Arab nations of getting rid of Hamas in Gaza. Like they are excited for that, and they're not concerned about Palestinian civilian deaths if Hamas is not in control of Gaza. And I wonder if, whenever the end of this situation happens, I don't, it's hard to even conceptualize Hamas not being in charge, but if in some way they aren't, are Saudi Arabia and Egypt and UAE gonna pour so much like resources into Gaza that people don't get radicalized after
Mhm.
this? Like, I don't know.
Well,
Um,
this whole thing, because it's like they've flattened northern Gaza. They're
yeah,
working on flattening the rest of Gaza. Some of the land is pretty much uninhabitable right now, but the amount of work and construction and everything, like the amount of money to rebuild, like even if Israel decides to claim that land, what are they doing to themselves? Like they're guaranteeing radicalization, but also financial losses.
yeah.
It's
Israel
just,
claiming it is silly. Like, Israel can't do anything with
mhm,
it, really. But if Saudi Arabia, like,
mhm,
from my perspective, and there have been some other people that have said it too. Like, I think that Hamas launched these attacks to kind of to stop the peace talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Either that, or they saw those talks happening and like, we're gonna be done for. We might as well go out with a bang. One of the two. But it doesn't seem like Saudi Arabia is gonna be like, I think they're still gonna go through with whatever they were doing with Israel. Like, I
mhm.
feel like they're still gonna do it. And for sure that will include putting a lot of money into rebuilding whatever's been flattened in Gaza.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I just wonder, like, what's gonna happen? Like,
I can't
if
imagine. I can't imagine anyone wanting to live there, knowing you're building your homes on the corpses of the people.
they'll live there. I mean, it's been happening. Like,
Mhm.
it's not the first time that
Yeah.
Israel has bombed Gaza, and I mean, this is the worst one for sure. But it happened in 2014. It happened in 2008,
Mhm.
and there's been stuff in between those times. But like, I just wonder, like,
Mhm.
what's going to happen if Hamas isn't there and the Palestinian Authority takes control of Gaza and they're working with Saudi Arabia. You know, there's no like more Iranian influence in Gaza. They're working with Egypt, they're working with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and whoever else, Kuwait, and they start rebuilding Gaza. Like, who knows? Like, some parts of the West Bank are pretty nice. They could turn Gaza like that too.
Mhm.
Like, who knows?
Well, a little bit more from this article here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pushed back against alarm that's been raised by key allies, world leaders of aid agencies, as Israel prepares for a ground invasion of Rafah in Gaza. Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying lose the war, keep Hamas there, Netanyahu said during an interview. He on Friday he announced he had ordered his military to prepare a plan to evacuate Rafah, a key corridor for humanitarian assistance in southern Gaza, where Palestinians have previously been told to flee for safety. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby warned the U.S. would not support Israel's assault on the region. Also, probably not going to do anything about it, warning that military operation would be a disaster for civilians there. In an interview with NPR, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, said in a military operation in the city cannot proceed under the current conditions. United Nations Secretary has similar expression. It's nice they're saying that now. You know, so over 28,000 people so far have been killed by Israel's offensive in Gaza Strip, according to Gaza Hamas-controlled health ministry. Thousands have been injured, millions more have been displaced. At least 224 Israeli soldiers have been killed, according to Israeli military officials, in addition to the casualties suffered in Hamas incursion on October 7th. Sure, just got to throw that in there for some reason. But let's go here. From Ryan Grimm on Twitter. This government will live in infamy. 20 years from now, you won't be able to find a single person willing to admit they supported what the Israeli government did in late 2023 through 2024. If we go up to the statement here, from the Prime Minister's office, it's impossible to achieve the goal of a war eliminating Hamas by leaving 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah. is there any proof that they're even there? And if so, so what? Like at this point. On the contrary, it is clear that intense activity in Rafah requires that civilians evacuate the areas of combat. Therefore, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the IDF and security establishment to submit to the cabinet a combined plan for evacuating the population and destroying their battalions.
Well, it's just it's just evacuate where, like,
Evacuate where? But then also they're going to have the excuse, well, Hamas is with the evacuees.
well,
So then
exactly,
whatever they go to next,
exactly,
well, Hamas is there too.
exactly. So that's the thing, like, and you saw that in the Iraq War. You see that in the wars all the time. They're blending in with the civilian population, and to be clear, like, yeah, some of those Hamas fighters are like, yeah, okay, we can't fight anymore. Let's just blend in with it,
Mhm.
for sure. It's a guerrilla fighting force for the most part. So yeah, like, but it's just what the IDF is doing is not fighting a war. They're not fighting against combatants.
Mm-mm.
Like, they are targeting civilians. Like, I remember when like the fight against ISIS in northern Syria was happening. And for sure, I mean, it's a shame. Those ISIS fighters would literally go on top of a building and shoot at whatever. They know that after that, NATO plane, American plane is going to bomb that building. And there are hella civilians in that building. But that was their tactic. Like, yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna shoot from here, then we're gonna leave, and then y'all are gonna kill the civilians, and then we're gonna go film them. That's not even what Israel's doing. They're just like, oh, that's where the civilians are. Like, that's where the old ladies are.
Mm-hmm.
Bomb that.
Yeah. Bomb the hospital, bomb the people, shoot the
Yeah.
people with the white flags carrying
Right.
babies. We're going to
Right.
get into one of the civilian cases in just a moment. But just there is so much proof out there right now that they are targeting civilians. They've targeted journalists and their families. Like, there's
Yeah.
so much proof out there of this, and yet, Canada will still be like, oh, we support Israel defending itself within the confines of, humanitarian law.
Why doesn't Israel support defending itself? Egypt told them that the
Mhm.
attack by Hamas was going to happen. They were warned that that attack was going to happen. Going to happen. American people have gone on TV and said, "Yeah, Egypt warned them," and
Mhm.
whatever. So why didn't, like? I'm of the opinion now that Netanyahu let it happen. Like, they let it happen, but even like, if they got snuck up on by Hamas or whatever, sure, like I mean, I'm trying not to ramble. It does suck on some level what Hamas did, because Hamas knows what's going to happen after.
Mhm.
So then it just makes me wonder if they were just like, when Saudi Arabia and Israel are shaking hands, we're done for. So we got to just like go out with a bang. That's a part of me feels like that, but ultimately, whatever. At the end of the day, like when this conflict first happened, I was saying on Power Report, Israel is not concerned with defeating Hamas. Like, they're not. Israel, when they put those planes in the air, it's to bomb civilians.
Mhm.
They want to take the civilians out.
Yeah.
It's genocidal. They don't want to kill everybody, but it is like a genocidal thing where they're like, let's lower the population a bit, quote unquote, cut the grass, like they like to say, or mow the lawn or something like that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like, you did this in 2014, you were killing people in 2021, and you didn't do much, obviously, because after that, Hamas is able to inflict this like crazy attack on you and you're just like sitting on your hands. So obviously you didn't do anything before,
Yeah.
but that's obvious because they target civilians.
No, nothing, absolutely nothing justifies what is happening right now. Like there's no,
No.
and this is why I get so upset with the Zionists right now, because it's like, oh, it's all about, keeping Israel safe and all. And it's like almost 30,000 people. For what? Half children. Like, it's just, yeah, I recently outed somebody as a Zionist. Not that I needed to out her.
Let's hear about that.
Julie Gold? Oh, Judy
No.
Gold.
No.
When Dan was on my show with me, we were covering Yuck Yuck's Comedy Nightclub doing a stand-up fundraiser for the Friends of the IDF.
Gross.
And I saw that poster, not even in detail, because the only poster I could see at the time was very tiny. But we were just covering it because like it was a gross event. But while I was live with him, I noticed a name on there. And it was Judy Gold. And so I didn't say anything at the time because it's like, okay, I need to look into this. And so in the next couple live streams, I went into far more detail with it. But Judy Gold is somebody who goes on to the Majority Report quite regularly for the fun half.
Oh, really?
For the Friday shows. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A friend of Sam Cedars.
Mm.
And she was one of the performers at this fundraiser for the IDF, Friends of the IDF. And there's a video of her going to the event, mocking protesters outside of it in Toronto on her Instagram page. And she retweeted a video of Rebel News covering it. And Rebel News is like a hardcore right-wing grifting network here in Canada. Just like the National Post gave them coverage, like positive coverage too. And it's like the National Post is a right-wing rag that regularly has like anti-trans and anti-queer stuff in it. And so if you have these right-wing sources saying, good on you, we're with you and all that, you might want to, take a look in the mirror. Like you might want to do a check. You might want to be like, why are these right-wing people so happy with me right now? And so terribly upsetting. And I don't know, like I can't say I outed her with it because she's advertising she's going on this tour. But since there's a lot of crossover with the Majority Report audience and my audience, I would imagine somebody has already mentioned that they've emailed the Majority Report with the poster saying, what up? But like when I originally was covering that story, I had no idea she was involved with it, but I'm not about to not call her out because I really like the Majority Report.
Right.
I saw it, and then it's like, as somebody who was following her on these platforms, who generally was supportive of her, it's like, no, I gotta rescind all of that. I can't, in good conscience, support her when she's doing a fucking fundraiser for Friends of the IDF. It's just, to put that much effort into it, like, I could almost understand, somebody in their 60s who's been indoctrinated into Zionism, but who just quietly sits there and says nothing, but still kind of believes that this is in the best interest of Israel.
Right.
That's one thing. But to so publicly put your time and resources and advertising into supporting a genocidal campaign?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I have a video that I just posted yesterday where I've kind of did my best trying to clip out from the 3 different live streams and have it in a flowing kind of storyline of this. And it's been getting a little bit of traction on YouTube, but I imagine some of the people who watch my show might be IMing the Majority Report on Monday. Because the last time Judy was on their show, I think was in October after the initial attack.
Wow. Do you know if they talked about it or?
I remember thinking of it at the time, and they didn't touch the subject.
Okay.
Because usually when she's going on, she's there because she's a comedian, friend of Sam's. It's usually, the Friday shows are supposed to be more lighthearted in nature and stuff. So they were talking about a lot of other things, but that didn't get brought up at all, from what I recall. But yeah, just
I remember, I think it was 2018. Pharrell was performing at the Friends of the IDF fundraiser, and for me, I was just like, what national army is doing a fundraiser? Like, what is that about? Like, you're doing a fundraiser for like AR-15s and what? Like, you're a national, you're an army of a nation. Like, that should be embarrassing. Like, what is like if Pakistan's military is doing a fundraiser? Like, what?
mhm.
But yeah, he was there singing "Happy," I guess.
We just have some people in the chat questioning something. So I'm just going to quickly look it up on a different tab. But if well, actually, let's do it for everyone to see. So let's do this. Bring this over here. Share this tab instead. So let's go to, because people are questioning when was the last time Judy was on the Majority Report.
Mm.
Oh, and you're not seeing this. Oh, no, I did that wrong.
I can
Just a
see
sec.
it.
Just a sec, people. Okay, here we are. I have to be aware of what the audience is viewing and what BAM is viewing are two different things, and sometimes I hit the wrong button. Okay, so let's see. So we have this one here. So Judy Gold demands Emma be kicked off the show,
Oh,
jokingly, 3 months ago. And I believe if I click on that,
I think they were saying that that was a rerun,
a rerun?
or like the last time she was on was a rerun. Okay, yeah, I know who she is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if we go back. 3 months ago. I'm not sure. I remember seeing her not that long ago. But the way that they have their video set up now for the fun half, which she would be on, it's all unlisted.
Okay.
So maybe if we go to the live, because I could have swore I saw her in October, or even before that. So let's see, that was 3 months ago. Let's see if it's going to be in a thumbnail. So that's 4 months ago. Yeah, it's hard to search because it would be in an unlisted video. Unless there's clips like the one that we were just looking at. Because like even looking at these, I don't know which ones are the Friday shows.
Yeah.
To even go and then
Well,
click on it, then to click to the
honestly, I feel like that'd be. I wish they have her on. Let her come on and talk about like why she's supporting it.
yeah.
Because like I mean, if her politics are on the left in general, like here in America, like I would wonder, you know, I never listened to these people, so I would wonder like
Mhm.
what her opinions are right now in regards to this, or maybe I don't know. I feel like they should have her on. Let her come talk about it.
Like this clip here, be a rerun or not, was on October 21st of 2023. And I believe she was on the Majority Report Friday show for that. So let's get really sleuthy. So October 21st, 2023. Sorry, this probably is not all that interesting for people. Does this even have... They don't put the dates in all their live streams. Again, in the unlisted ones, they have the dates. So here we have a 12/23.
I'm gonna give Sam credit and say that if she was on there after
they would have talked about it.
They would have talked about it.
Yeah, so that's 11/16/23. I would hope so. I'm just trying, like I said, that clip was from the 21st. Again, it's so hard to see when these were aired. Well, if somebody in the sandbox wants to figure this out, that would be great. If they could find the actual live stream that she was last on. Because, yeah, this is something that I could easily would do if we weren't live, you know, to then go and click on all the links and see which one and stuff. But my sense of time isn't necessarily the greatest when it comes to recalling conversations. Like, I'll remember the conversation, but I don't necessarily know when it happened.
Right.
And they don't, like I said, they don't have the date in a lot of these titles, but they'll have them in all the fun have titles. But you actually have to literally click on the link because they're unlisted. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. The ADHD is kicking in.
Like, I haven't really seen or listened to any of the Zionist or pro-Israel take on the situation. We used to, in college, we would have Palestine rallies, and some like I went to San Diego State, so there's like students from everywhere. So we had some Israeli students and some like pro-Israel students, and we would debate with them and argue with them and stuff like that. Obviously, back then it was like kind of like second Intifada time, and you know their arguments were just like so bad and silly to me. Like, I'm like, you just sound like you're not an intellectual. You're just like, I just want my side to win. So like, there's not really much to talk about. I would imagine this time at least, you know, they can say, well, look what Hamas did to us. It's our 9/11 or whatever. Okay, like, okay, you got some kind of argument, but like at some point it's overkill. So I don't know. I've never really been too interested in what they have to say, but I would watch Sam and her talk about it. I feel like that would be good to hear.
It's one of the things, only if they're comfortable with it, because, you know, they're friends. Like, it's not like this would be a debate between two parties necessarily. And so when you add that personal kind of, it's hard to explain, but I don't want to see them have to like hash out their personal lives, like their personal relationship on air for people's entertainment. Whereas if it was him debating Ben Glebe, like Sam debating Ben Glebe, I would watch the hell out of that. Because Ben Glebe is massive, massive Zionist.
Well, see, that's what, like, I don't know if he a Zionist? Is he like left in or like a lib in America and then a Zionist or what? Like, because I feel like she probably has similar politics to Sam here,
Yeah.
but then when it comes to Israel, they're different. And I
Mhm.
don't know, like I don't know how those people like, I don't know how they tie the two in together. Like I don't know how they
Yeah.
do that. I guess I'm interested in like what they
Yeah,
would have to
like
say, but
I hope they have the conversation at least off air, but when it comes to like their personal relationship,
mm,
I don't want to see that necessarily put on screen for people's entertainment.
okay. Well, you know what? I want to
Mhm.
see it. Yeah, look,
Yeah.
entertain me, Sam.
Yeah. It is just like to me that's I do hope they have that conversation, and if it turns out, like they've cut ties, so be it, but I don't see the need for them to necessarily. It's the same like Emma has already called out TYT for some of their stuff that they've done.
Right.
I don't see the need of constantly getting her to comment on every new thing of
No.
like
Yeah.
harming her personal relationships with the people that she's had there type thing.
Right.
So
Although I can't, I personally can't be friends with a transphobe.
yeah, neither can I. So
Like we
uh
can't be friends anymore.
just like
That's
I can't be
unfortunate.
friends with somebody who is cheering on a genocide. Like it's just
No, I can't do it.
like those are hard lines for me.
Yeah, like I don't necessarily hate you. I don't want to punch you in the
Hmm.
face, but we're not buddies anymore because
Yeah.
that's gross.
Yeah, but I don't see the need to get Emma to comment on every
Right.
time TYT does something, just like everyone in the media who Sam potentially knows. Every
Mm.
time they come out as a Zionist or something, I don't see the need to then he has to comment on this
Yeah, no,
because
I
we
don't.
all know where Sam stands on this.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe somebody will call in and ask him about it.
Yeah, but yeah, as far as I know, the last time she was on, from my recollection, which is not the greatest, it was after October 7th. But like I said, my recollection not necessarily the greatest, so don't hold me to it. Yeah. All I've said in my videos is that if I ever see her on the show again, I'm turning it off because I can't support that at all.
No, no.
Okay, so on with the news. So from Jeremy Corbyn, who said Palestinians risk life and limb to reach Rafah, the last designated safe zone in Gaza. Now they're being told to leave. Where are they supposed to go? This is not an evacuation. This is ethnic cleansing, and our government is complicit by letting Israel act with impunity. And same goes for Canada.
And America
Hmm.
and uh, all those surrounding nations,
Hmm.
uh, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Morocco.
Yeah.
They're not surrounding. Morocco's far. Turkey. I'm throwing you
Hmm.
in there too, Turkey.
Yeah.
Bahrain, UAE. They're guilty.
Yeah, and we've given plenty of weapons to Israel since this has all started and stuff in Canada. Like, Canada is so complicit in what's happening. But, like, now it's getting to, like, a boiling point, and now officials are like, maybe not do the full genocide. Maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys helped let it get this far in the first place.
Yeah.
And so, talking about some of those civilians from Mehdi Hassan, she was fleeing with her grandson who was holding a white flag. Then she was shot. Because Mehdi is responding to this person, like it or not, but it's the fact the IDF has implemented more measures to protect civilians than any military in the history,
Wow.
in the face of terrorist army trying to use human shields and the UN agency complicit with the strategy.
Jeez.
The fact that there are people on air saying, no, Israel has like a really good track record for not targeting citizens in this, again, just blows my mind how they're refusing to see reality. or just totally not acknowledging it, or knowing and lying. Like at this point, I have to say they're lying.
Oh, yeah, of course. They're lying and they're blinded by nationalism,
Mhm.
and then they're lying. They are actually just telling a lie. Like they're not. This is not political analysis or anything. They're just like, I'm gonna say the opposite of what's happening.
Mhm. Yeah, so here we have Melanie Joly, the foreign affairs minister here in Canada. We are deeply concerned by reports of an Israeli military operation in Rafah. It would have devastating impact, putting the lives of Palestinians and foreign nationals, including Canadians, seeking refuge in grave danger and making the vital delivery of human aid dangerous. We continue to call for the protection of civilians and for the release of hostages, for urgent efforts towards sustainable ceasefire, and for the increased humanitarian aid. Yeah, but we also stopped funding UNRWA. That would have, helped with that humanitarian aid. And from the CBC Pitchbot, really fun Twitter account to follow if you're Canadian or if you're not Canadian, who makes fun of Canadian media. Canada is deeply concerned by reports of Israeli genocide on the Palestinian people supplied with Canadian weapons, but not enough to literally do anything about it.
No, there's also this other part of me. I don't know what it sounds like when I say these things. I also wonder what someone wants the USA, the UK, Canada
Mhm.
to do. Like, do you want these countries to go to war with Israel? I
Mhm.
don't know. Like, they already have the weapons now.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, sorry, breaking news. Somebody said they found the stream that Judy was on September 22nd.
okay,
Okay. So, as far as I know, then, she hasn't been on since. Just want to make that clear then. She,
just missed it.
yeah.
Uh, but
Okay.
yeah, I just wonder. It's like, okay, like, because when countries go to war with other countries, like, you know, I don't necessarily like. I don't want to see America step in, put boots on the ground in Ukraine. Like, I don't necessarily want to see that. Maybe there's some people that do. Um, but I don't know. Like, and also for me, like, I went off about this on Power Report. I'm not going to do it again. But I would love to see countries in the region do something. I'm not waiting for the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, whatever. I'm not waiting, or France, Germany. I'm not waiting for them to help Palestinian people. I'm gonna wait till I'm dead.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if those other countries in the region, those other Arab Muslim countries, who the population is up in arms about what's happening in Gaza right now, who's been up in arms about it for forever, who these countries will have all sorts of rhetoric about the situation. Why is there nothing you could do? You're right there. Saudi Arabia in the 70s, when there was a war going on with Israel, they shut off the oil and we had a gas crisis all over the world. 1973. That has not happened. In this situation going on with Gaza, that there has been nothing. And I feel like a broken record because I talk about this all the time on Power Report, but um, 2022, the midterms are happening. Saudi Arabia and Russia wants Republicans to win. They make sure the gas prices shoot up. And we're seeing stickers on the gas tanks, the gas pumps. Biden did this or something like that. These are stickers of Joe Biden. You're telling me this started in October. All these Palestinian civilians dying, and you haven't tried one day to be like, hey, we're gonna lower our oil output until something happens.
Mhm.
But it just shows that these countries that are supposed to care, I I'm not waiting for the United States to care. But if you're in that region and you have some power and you're talking all day about free Palestine and oh my God, Israel's terrible, well then do something. You're right there.
Mhm.
But the reality is, I'm sorry, Egypt is basically Israel's biggest ally outside of the United States. Egypt is the one that warned them about the attack. They were trying to save them. They weren't over there trying to make sure they weren't watching Hamas get a blow against Israel. They warned them about it. And Saudi Arabia, right before those talks, I'm sorry, right before Hamas's attack, they had an Israeli, I think it was the tourism minister or something like that, went to Saudi Arabia, and a Saudi delegation went to the West Bank. It was the first time ever. And they're handshaking about getting Hamas out of Gaza. That's the reality on the ground. Saudi Arabia does not care about these 30,000 Palestinian civilians. Egypt does not care. Um, those are the most powerful countries in the region. Those are the only ones really worth mentioning.
Yeah, I don't understand how people can just, if you have the power to stop this and you're not, I don't get that. Like, at least in Yemen, they're having massive protests, but they don't have the power.
Yeah, they're doing something. They're
Yeah.
they're
Like,
shooting at
yeah,
those ships or whatever.
the
They're
Houthis.
doing something. Like,
Mhm,
but Saudi Arabia is not like
mhm.
a weak nation. They
Yeah,
have the
they
power
have the
to
power.
influence. They have the power to influence American elections.
Mhm.
Snap of a
Yeah.
finger. You just shut down that oil, gas prices go up, and that changes things around the world.
Yeah.
But
It yeah, it's sickening to see the countries that have the power to do something do nothing while this is
nothing,
happening.
nothing. And I mean, obviously I didn't mention this, and I don't know who knows, but like I was a part of the Muslim community for a good 10 years. So I know the conversations that happen behind closed doors, and what the rhetoric is like. And for me, it's embarrassing. Like I'm not Muslim anymore.
Mhm.
Like I don't really care on a personal level, but like it's embarrassing to see that these countries, even when I was part of the community, like we had these conversations and people would be like, oh, like how come America doesn't do anything? I'm like, why are you waiting for America to do something? These countries are right there, dude. They're right there.
Mhm.
They can do something. I'm not saying they gotta like go to war with Israel. I'm not saying that. But if you have the ability to make sure American gas prices go up tomorrow and the UK gas prices and the Canadian, like everywhere is going to feel the effect from Saudi Arabia. And let's put Russia in there too, because they like to act like they care about Palestinians too. You have the power to make the world change, to
Mhm.
feel it. And you're just not doing shit. When the Houthis started attacking ships in the Red Sea or wherever it was, no, yeah, the Red Sea. Um, I thought the gas prices were going to go crazy. I was like, damn, shoot, like they're about to go like $6, and they didn't budge. I was like, damn. So all these other times where they're like, well, there was a pirate attack and the gas prices got to go up. So you guys are lying all those times, but in the meantime, there's thousands and thousands of Palestinian civilians dying. And these countries that are right there, that are supposed to care, that are saying that they care, are not doing anything. It's a shame. It's embarrassing. And people should remember that.
Yeah. And then you have countries like mine. Somebody saying breaking, Canada issued 28.5 million in new weapons permits to Israel in the first 2 months after October 7th, including bombs, rockets, aircrafts, ground vehicles. And they try to say, oh, but they're non-lethal weapons, as in they're the components to weapons that,
Oh,
are then put into lethal weapons. And the serfs quote tweeting that saying these combined values exceed that of the total Canadian arms export to Israel for any year on record.
damn.
Yeah, so we're aiding and abetting.
Yeah. And you know what? That's what I expect from like the Western
Mhm.
countries. Like that's what I expect. Israel is a satellite state there for like
Mhm.
America and the UK,
Settler
basically.
colonialism.
Yeah. I'm not expecting, these people to come save Palestinians. and the people there aren't expecting it either. And really, like, I'm leaving out like the Palestinian opinion because they also know, like, those people there in Gaza also know that those Arab countries are not going to help them too. Like the first thing they'll say is that the Arabs abandoned us, but it's just a shame that like these like I really just focus on Saudi Arabia. Like it's just really sad that I know that in probably September or October, the gas prices here are going to shoot up, especially if Donald Trump's on the ballot. They want him to win. They're going to make sure that Biden has high gas prices when
Mhm.
the election happens.
It's great.
That's more important to them than all these Palestinians
Yeah.
dying is a shame.
Yeah, watching what's about to happen in the States over the next year is just.
Yeah.
But let's get back to some of those civilians. So the other kind of story, not shocking, but very saddening story, is a little while ago there was media footage out there of a phone call of a 6-year-old girl trapped in a car with some of her family members dead. And pleading for somebody to come rescue her. She was scared of the dark. Like just heartbreaking, heartbreaking call. Yeah, she's dead. The mother had to find out that her daughter was dead. And so Owen Jones, who's just been doing fantastic coverage of this, is quote tweeting this saying, urgent, the Palestinian Red Crescent ambulance was discovered bombed in Tel Al Hawi area of Gaza City, resulting in the killing of crew members who had been missing since the rescue mission for the child 12 days ago. So not only was this precious little girl dead with her family members in the car, the ambulance was targeted that was trying to reach them. And Owen Jones saying, what does it take for those refusing to speak out about Israel's onslaught to break their silence? Literally, what does it take? The 6-year-old girl, her family slaughtered by Israel fire, trapped in the car, an ambulance dispatched to save her. Israel killed the lot. And of course, if we look at media coverage, Owen Jones points.
Targeting civilians per usual.
Yeah. Owen Jones points out, found dead when Ukrainian baby was killed in Russia airstrike. The BBC had no trouble attributing the blame to in its headline. These aren't even a subtle double standards. And so this is the Ukraine one. Baby killed in Russian strike on a hotel, whereas her name was Hind. 6 found dead in Gaza days after phone calls for help. Just found dead, you know.
Yeah.
These
They just, maybe COVID got them. Who
Yeah.
knows?
4 major Western outlets covering the story of Hind. None of them use the word killed or Israel. This is not an accident, it's a systemic effort to whitewash the crimes of Israel and complicity in those crimes. And as you can see from these 6 headlines, found dead, found dead. 5-year-old Palestinian girl found dead, trapped in car with dead relatives. That's it. And I've pointed this out in other stories I've done before where some news articles are always willing to remind people of the death toll of October 7th in Israel, but then negate to mention the death toll of Palestinians in Gaza since.
Yeah, the death toll of Palestinians in Gaza before that.
Yeah.
Like Israel's killing Palestinian, like they're living under occupation. They're killing Palestinian civilians all the time.
Or they say the hostages, what about the hostages? But they never mention all the Palestinians that were kidnapped, wrongfully imprisoned, the thousands of them in Israel.
All the time. All the time. Let's talk about how many of those hostages Israel's killed bombing.
Yeah.
That was like the first thing that like when they started bombing, they said, oh, we're bombing Hamas. It's like, okay, so you're lying because if you think Hamas kidnapped them, those people, then they're with the Hamas people. So you're saying that you're just bombing the hostages? No, you're bombing civilians, dude. Like But they've also killed civilian hostages in bombings too.
Yeah,
So
there was those 3 men that escaped and had white flags when we were approaching the army, and they were all shot dead. And the IDF only questions like, "Oh, was this a mistake?" when they noticed one of them had red hair.
which is funny because I've known Palestinians like red hair and freckles, but
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah, no, they're like, "Oh, this one doesn't quite look what we think they're supposed to look like. Maybe we should check their ID and to find out that they were the hostages."
Yeah.
Um,
Probably. I mean, you can't even say like they're poorly trained soldiers
mhm.
because I'm sure that's what they're taught. Just like shoot anybody. But yeah, ridiculous.
They're taught to shoot first, ask questions later. I'm pretty sure I've heard that American police officers train with them.
Right.
Also, sorry, I'm going to try to start moving on as fast as we can to the other things. But speaking of misleading ways that news tends to cover things, so apparently there was this news out there of NYPD officers assaulted by 5 asylum seekers and how brutal these asylum seekers are, and we need to deport them all. And Olemi mentioning, I just want you all to remember exactly which leftist creators ate this up and ran wild with NYPD's lies and started spewing xenophobia and calling for deportation. Oh, Anna covered this? Really? She covered this?
I'm wondering, did she even refer to herself as a leftist?
Yeah, she covered this news story about, I wonder how her leftist progressive analysis is of this story.
And robbery. He allegedly attacked a loss prevention officer at a Macy's department store during an alleged robbery, and also allegedly punched and bit a Nordstrom Rack employee in November.
So going over a history long before this event actually happened. Okay. So
I don't want to get ahead of myself here
sorry.
because I have a whole argument that I'm about to make. But let me just say this. Considering the lack of resources for migrants, considering the fact that you have a situation in which there isn't enough shelter and you have migrants sleeping outside, can we deport the migrants who are engaging in this kind of behavior and this kind of crime? Like, one of them has already gotten arrested twice for assaulting employees at retail stores. And then you have the surveillance footage of them kicking cops in the head as the cops are trying to detain another guy. Why? What are we doing? So they get arrested and then they're let out. No bail, because it's New York City, of course.
Yes, New York City, the crime capital of the United States. Be wary if you go there. She's so, when it comes to this subject and a couple other subjects, wow.
Yeah, I was never really much of a TYT watcher like that. So I haven't like watched her change
Mhm. Well,
necessarily.
she hasn't, let's just say she hasn't necessarily changed, but she's gotten more vocal and meaner when it comes to
Yeah,
these subjects.
well, I saw her on somebody's podcast say that she feels uncomfortable
Mm,
around people of other races.
yeah.
And I was just like, that's more racist than like a lot of things these right wing people say,
And
actually.
yet, whenever people say something to her about her being white, she'll be like, I'm not white though. She's Armenian. But then when she says that she feels uncomfortable talking to people outside of her race, what exactly is she meaning by race there?
Right, exactly. Um, but hearing no, like honestly, like that when I heard her say that, I was like, that's literally more racist than a lot of things these right wing commentators say,
Mhm.
actually. Like you can make a chicken and watermelon joke, like, okay, cool, whatever, that's cute. But when you're saying I feel uncomfortable around these people, like you sound like a KKK wife. Like So I don't really take her that serious, but also I'm not a TYT watcher.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really unfortunate her narrative on this subject. When I hear about NYPD getting beat up, I'm excited. you know, I,
Kind of overdue in some situations, or
right?
sometimes it's simply self-defense.
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, have y'all heard of Abner Louima? Like the NYPD still hasn't paid for that. So these
What? Sorry, please clarify.
okay, Abner Louima was I want to say this was like 1999 or 2000. I'm not sure, but he was arrested and assaulted and had a plunger put up his anus
Ugh.
by NYPD officers. He was beat to a pulp and was sodomized.
You know, I think I vaguely remember this now that you mention it.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
Mhm.
And not too long after that, there was another guy. I kind of forgot his name, but I think I forgot this person's name, but he was like shot like 41 times or something like that by NYPD.
Mhm.
Um, when he's like went for his wallet when
Mhm.
they're asking him for it. But yeah, like I don't know if you're a leftist and you're mad about the NYPD getting beat up by anybody.
Mhm.
I'm maybe they feel like they can't like I don't know if they knew that these were like migrants. Like I don't know if they knew if they were asylum seekers. But if they did and they felt like, hey, let's like not shoot them because they're asylum seekers, I'm here to encourage other asylum seekers. If you feel like they're not going to shoot you because of your status, please go assault the NYPD.
Well, there's an update to this story we'll get to in just a moment.
Okay, this is. Listen, I know we have a giant left wing audience, and I love you guys.
Speaking as an NB, I doubt that.
Please don't give in to some knee jerk reaction to provide cover for these people. These are
Yes, because they're asylum seekers, they don't have any rights anymore. that's,
Seriously.
that's basically like, oh, they're asylum. No, just take away all their rights. Feel free to do whatever the hell you want to them. Is kind of her argument here.
not people you need to provide cover for. These are people who are in the country claiming asylum. They don't have a right to be here. It is.
You have the right to. You do have the right to.
Wow. See, like,
You have that right to be there.
Like, see, like, what are we doing here? Like, they don't have a right to be here, really,
But you have the right to claim asylum.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, either you're just racist or you're an idiot. Like, what are we doing here? Like, they don't have a right to be here. Like, you're gross, dude. Come on now.
Is a privilege to be able to take advantage of our asylum program and be able to claim asylum, claim that you're here because of whatever reason. I don't know exactly which reason they gave for their asylum claim. And you get to have your case
'cause they're
adjudicated
liars.
in front of a judge. But if you're causing all sorts of chaos, and if you're assaulting police officers, like the idea that we're not even having a conversation about immediately deporting them is ridiculous. But then not only that, they get arrested and immediately released without bail because of bail reform in New York. That's insane. Right? Am I crazy? I don't know. I feel
Yes.
like I've lost my mind at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
I'm gonna get like an onslaught of ridiculous harassment because I think people seeking asylum
Harassment, not ridiculous though.
and taking up finite resources that could be given to another asylum seeker who isn't causing problems.
One of the good ones.
Right.
And so new body cam from Alejandra Carabello. New body cam footage shows the police approaching the group of men in Times Square unprovoked and told them to move. Then they started beating the man in the yellow after he started moving because he made a joke that the officer looked like Ugly Betty. NYPD lied, propaganda at work. And so there is footage of you seeing them walk away. He's pushing a stroller with his belongings in it. At one point, he stops to pick up something. then the cop kind of siphons him off from his group, pushes him up against the wall, and starts attacking him. But do you think Anna's going to say anything about that? You know, now that this footage is out there? Is she going to take back her statement? Or does she still feel like because they did some petty crimes earlier that they deserve to be deported anyway?
Like,
And
when she said they don't have a right to be here, like, I'm just like, okay, like,
yeah.
you're just not even part of what we're doing
And
here.
keep in mind, a lot of petty crimes are committed out of desperation.
Yeah, dude. You know, whatever. It's America, dude. People
Yeah.
are stealing stuff and shit. It's fine. Like, like things will be okay, dude.
Mhm.
You know, it's fine. And like, you
But,
know,
this is the footage going on in the background. I'm just going to. Yeah, it's. But her, like all these other media sources out there, they're not going to retract statements after they've been proven to be false. The way that they editorialize, the way that they pick stories, it's a choice. It's a choice to cover this story in the first place when there's
right,
so many other
right.
things that could be covered of more importance.
Whatever day this happened, for sure, there were like at least like 10 police shootings in America.
Yeah, well, it's like recently they did a whole big story and blow up about this one woke kindergarten class or something. It's like you're focusing in on that. Like
Right.
it's not even a real thing. Like it's done by one person as an experiment. Like it's not even
Right.
a real thing. And, also maybe starting to teach kids about inclusivity and all that sort of stuff younger, not necessarily a bad thing either.
Not a
But
bad thing at all.
the way that they framed it, the way that they blew up on it, the way that they commented on it, and it's like it's a non-story. It's not like this is something that is happening across the state, like, I don't know, don't say gay. Like,
Right.
it is one kindergarten class. What? Charter school, maybe, probably, I don't know.
No, I actually had to talk to a friend of mine, like an old friend of mine who I recently reconnected with, and apparently he's like a Joe Rogan guy now. But he was bringing that up, and I'm like, I didn't even know what the story was, but I'm like, what's the problem in telling kids that trans people exist? Like, that's a good thing, actually. Like, kids should be made aware of different kinds of people.
Mhm.
Like, right? You know?
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to get
I, I
on.
don't I don't know if Larry David is a Zionist or not, but I love Curb and Seinfeld, so he gets a pass.
Okay. Well, I wanted to touch on a couple stories about mental health. And so there's this one, which again, to me, is just a whole bunch of people making a non-story into a story for like different reasons. So actor Will Wheaton blasts comedian Larry David for jostling beloved Elmo. So basically on a morning show, he goes and assaults a puppet, which in and itself, okay, is this of poor taste? If this was like a comedy skit,
Yeah.
that's one thing, but this wasn't. It was him just getting annoyed with the character and going up and just assaulting this character because the voice was annoying. Which to me is not necessarily a good message to send out there. And it's a morning show where there could be kids watching who do love Elmo. Like, do I think that it is bad in itself? No, not really. But at the same time, if you look at the underlying messages of if you're annoyed by somebody, just go up and hit them.
Yeah.
Not a great message to be putting out there. Like, more than not, I think this is a non-story in and of itself that he would do this. Do I think it's in poor taste? Yes. Do I think it's detrimental? No. Where I start getting a little bit more peeved with people was how they reacted to Will Wheaton's reaction.
I'm gonna turn on this other light 1 second.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat, the sandbox, while he's lighting up the place.
I'm back.
Okay. Okay, I looked at the chat there. Well, we'll get back to the chat. I just want to get on with some of these stories I was hoping to cover. So Will Wheaton posted this, and for people who don't know, Will Wheaton was on Star Trek Next Generation. I was a huge fan when I was a kid, kind of had a crush on him. But he's later come out in life to say that as a child actor, he was abused. Shocking. And he actually went through some pretty traumatic stuff. And I watched something he did more recently. He had a talk, oh God, what's the name of the show? An online show podcast with the actor who played the bad guy in Smallville. Michael Rosen. Anyway, really fascinating chat that they had where Will Wheaton goes over his history of the abuse and the things that he suffered. And so basically he had a PTS almost response to this. And he posted something about it, just explaining how it upset him. And to me, it's people getting upset at his reaction that's bugging me. Because he's entitled to this reaction. He has this trauma in his background. And people are mocking him for just having these feelings. And, you know, that I don't agree with. Especially when you look at the extent of it. Glenn Greenwald.
Oh, no.
The Star Trek actor and intrepid liberal activist Will Wheaton posted a screed on Facebook full of rage towards Larry David for viciously assaulting the puppet named Elmo. I debated if we were satire for the first 4 paragraphs. When I realized it wasn't, I didn't want it to end.
I mean, you would think Glenn Greenwald had better things to do, but obviously he doesn't.
Like, Glenn Greenwald latching onto this for clout, like poking fun at somebody's trauma response for clout, to me is disgusting.
Glenn Greenwald is a disgusting human.
Yeah.
Look at an intrepid liberal activist. Like what? Like
what is he doing commenting on this in the first place? Like,
he knows that all his people want is just culture war bullshit.
Yeah, because again, do I think what Larry David did was horrible? No, just like I don't think what was it? Kathy Griffin held up the head of a severed Donald Trump. Do I think that's horrible? No. But can I understand why somebody might get triggered by seeing a childlike puppet that, you know, resonates with children, that is basically a child, suddenly be assaulted on a TV show, that it might stir up some negative emotions in some people? Yeah. And so they post about it. So what? That's them. But then to mock people for their trauma response, especially somebody who is just, you know, all in it for the clout and everything else he's done. And he is like, again, you choose the stories you cover. And to pick this out of everything, I find is just such a low blow to get into this, especially with the platform he has, with the following he has, because the last thing Will needs is a whole bunch of people piling on him, telling him what a baby he is, what a wimp he is, that he can't handle this, after he's dealing with actual trauma. And a lot of people, I've seen comments, a lot of people denying that he's had trauma, or boo-hoo, he was hit a few times as a kid and stuff like that. Maybe he needs to be hit more. Like, I've seen those comments. Like,
that's a shame. I mean, that's social media, though. I mean,
yeah,
you're gonna get the worst of the worst.
Just absolutely disgusting behavior. And, you know, I recommend, I'll try to find it later on and maybe put it in the description, but I've covered it before in a live stream. The talk that he had, I found was really eye-opening about narcissistic parents and how they force their children to be things and do things and have no feelings towards their own children, more or less, and how you can never get any sort of resolution from that. And, you know, a lot of what he was saying really resonated with me, which is why I'm kind of sympathetic to this. Because then it just also scares away other people from acknowledging their own trauma in certain situations.
Right.
And people shouldn't be afraid to talk about it.
Well, I don't want to hear it because then I might start crying. So we'll just.
Yeah, it's a really, I found to be like a good talk. So I have some more on Daniel Smith, but speaking of mental health, Bell to cut 4.8K jobs, sell 45 radio stations in major shakeup. Bell Media ending multiple television newscasts and making other programs cuts after parent company announced widespread layoffs and the sale of 45 of its 103 regional radio stations, so almost half.
Damn.
In an internal memo to Bell Media employees on Thursday, it says news stations such as CTV, BNN, Bloomberg would be affected immediately. The radio station being sold are in British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, because those are probably the only locations they exist. The memo signed by David something or other, Vice President of Local TV, Radio, and Bell Media Studios, and Richard Gray, Vice President of News and Bell Media, said weekday noon TV cast, blah, blah, blah. So they said multi-skilled journalists would replace news correspondents and technician teams reporting to CTV National News in Alberta, Manitoba, Quebec. Yeah, so the company in an open letter, I'm just trying to get to some information. Some employees have already been notified or were to be informed Thursday of being laid off, while the balance will be told by the spring. Anyway, just horrible that this huge corporation would lay off that many jobs. And for you Americans out there, remember, we're about 1/10 of the size in the population.
Yeah, Canada has less people than California.
Yeah, so imagine this in American numbers. If we do the conversion properly, that would be 48,000 jobs cut.
Right.
Equivalent to the economy. Like, just wow.
And I'm wondering, like, okay, they're selling 45 radio stations, like, to whom? Like, what does that mean? Like, is there some
Yeah.
kind of merger happening?
Well, I suppose you could sell it to independent people who just want to have a radio station.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
It's to do this, and Bell like the reason why Bell doing this is usually they have a history of not treating their employees that great when it comes to. There was another story that blew up a long time ago about a woman who was sexually assaulted by other employees and something, and how the company treated her was just horrendous and stuff.
Oh, goodness.
And the thing is that Bell is well known for this. Bell, let's talk. Thank you for creating real change in mental health. Yes, once a year they have a day where they raise money for mental health issues. And they wanted people to know mental health matters. You know, it's a problem, and they take action and they care. And one day a year, they do a hashtag, and like 5 cents for every text or something with that hashtag
Right.
will go towards crisis centers and things. And because they're just so aware of it. 1 in 2 young people struggling alone with their mental health. 11.8% of people in Canada have thoughts of suicide at some point in their life, and over almost 600,000 service interactions who received in 2023 at Kids Help Phone. Just, yeah, they take act, they care. They care so much that they do this. Also, Bell is increasing their payouts to shareholders.
Come on. Now we got nothing for you, buddy.
Yeah, Montreal, February, blah, blah. So today reported results for the fourth quarter, full year, provided financial guidance for 2024, including 1.3 or 12 per share increase of the BCE annual common share division, 3.9. Yeah, they're making money. The shareholders are making bank. So Breaking Bell is cutting 9% of its workforce, a total of 4,800 jobs, including journalists and other workers at its Bell Media subsidiaries, as well as sells 45 of radio stations. It's not a viable business anymore, being in media.
Well, I mean, for sure, radio is dying to some extent, for sure. But I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, like, who did they like? Who are they selling to? Like, what are they selling exactly? Like, I just
Yeah.
that part is confusing to me. But stock buybacks is not confusing.
Yeah. Like our Canadian corporations are just as corporations as American corporations. But, a prime minister, Justin Trudeau himself, had some strong language about this.
Garbage decision by a corporation that should know better. We have seen over the past years
I'm trying to
journalistic outlets, radio stations, small community newspapers bought up by corporate entities.
That's Doug Ford in the background there, just looking like, oh, shoot, he's talking about corporations being bad, and I'm on camera. Gotta look okay now.
Who then lay off journalists, change the offering, the quality of offering to people. And then when people don't watch as much or engage as much, the corporate entity says, oh, see, they're not profitable anymore. We're going to sell them off. This is the erosion, not just of journalism, of quality local journalism, at a time where people need it more than ever, given misinformation and disinformation, but it's eroding our very democracy. Our abilities to tell stories to each other of how people's lives are, stories that reflect our own communities and not, central offices in our biggest cities, is part of what binds this country together from coast to coast to coast. With incredible diversity of experiences, of geographies, we need those local voices. And over the past years, corporate Canada, and there are many culprits on this, have abdicated their responsibility.
I can see the effort Doug Ford is putting into just not making any expression right now. Trying to stay as stone-faced as possible through this, considering how many jobs he's cost people.
Toward the communities that they have always made very good profits off of in various ways. And they need, as a government, we have been stepping up over the past years, fighting for local journalism, fighting for investments that we can have, all the while fending off attacks from conservatives and others who say, no, you're trying to buy off journalists. We're trying to support journalism in this country and across this country, but no government can do it alone. Canadians need to demand better, as we will be demanding better from corporate leaders, like in this case Bell, that are eroding Canadians' ability to know each other, to trust each other, and to trust in the country and the future we are building together. So yeah, I'm pretty pissed off about what's just happened.
Whoa.
We're so polite up here in Canada, eh? A lot of, again, this is just a lot of bluster from him, because it's like he has helped lay the groundwork for this type of thing to happen. Like, up here in Canada, we have basically two major telecom companies, Rogers and Bell. And literally, when one of them had a blackout for about 24 hours, the economy had to shut down.
Jeez.
Because that's how much of a monopoly both of these companies have. Because debit transactions and all that sort of stuff done over the internet couldn't be done.
Wow.
And so we're held hostage by these two companies that work in tandem together. Oh, we'll offer you this deal, but then you switch over and the offer, they work together to keep prices high. And you don't really have options here in this country. So it's why not just maybe pick one and nationalize it? You know what? Just do that. Just nationalize it. Make it available, because we have some of the highest rates in the world. when it comes to telecom, cell phones, things of that sort. And so many people living with poverty don't have access to this. But he's doing this now, and I've said it before, he's very performative. Now, when it comes to the queer issues, he had very strong statements against Alberta. I believe he believes that. Do I think he probably has like some level of compassion and empathy for the employees that are being laid off, but he will do nothing to prevent this type of thing from happening. And in fact, a lot of the things, policies, and stuff that he supports help let this happen. But it's important for him to get up on camera and look like he's the good guy in all of this.
Yeah, it's been a while since I heard Trudeau talk, honestly. I kind of like in my head, I mix him and Emmanuel Macron up. I don't know why. Maybe they're kind of the same guy a little bit. But yeah, he went hard there. It almost felt like he was kind of like sneak dissing Doug Ford a little bit. Like maybe he
It
had a
surprised
little,
me.
yeah, like maybe he had a little smoke for Dougie there, but yeah, Justin Trudeau is he's a capitalist. He is like, he's not,
Neoliberal 100%.
he is not like gonna do much to protect these people's jobs. But
In fact, like his government is responsible for forcing workers back to work during the pandemic.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, because they went on strike and stuff, and he actually forced them back to work. Like he doesn't care about workers. He really doesn't. Again, it's one of the things, he might actually have like individual sympathy for the fact that there's going to be people who lose their jobs, but he will not do anything within his power to make sure this type of thing doesn't happen, to make sure that people have secure jobs, to make sure that people have livable incomes. And every time things like this come up, people will say, oh, jurisdiction, because some things are run provincially, some things are run federally. But the thing is, with most of our problems, things can be done at the federal level to help the situation, and things can be done at the provincial level to help the situation, and neither are doing it. Also, neither can fix the problem alone. They need to actually work together to, end the housing crisis, to end the affordability crisis, to help with wages, to help with, disability rights, like all of that sort of stuff. The province can't just fix it on its own. The federal government can't just fix it on them. But separately, there are things they can do to make the situation better.
Right.
And
Bad Lefty said, but Sandy, he's so dreamy.
He's single.
Is he?
He got divorced, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Just a little while ago. It was on the news for a day.
Wow, okay.
Because most people up here don't care about personal, like when it comes to that sort of thing, they don't care.
That's way different. I can't imagine someone single like getting anywhere close to power here. Like, I mean,
No, he
I guess
got
you can be a
divorced
single.
just a little while ago while he was prime minister.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I think there's been
Okay.
Americans to separate while they were in office publicly.
I mean, a president? I don't think
Well, not a
so.
president, but
Yeah,
other high profile people. Because like the thing
yeah,
is
kind of.
the prime minister is not a president.
Right.
Like he is, when it comes down to it, just another MP, member of parliament. He just happens to be the figurehead of his party.
Right.
So it's not as like he doesn't have any individual control, but he does help to influence party politics and things of that sort quite heavily, but he doesn't have any individual ability to do something. So, it's not like it's as high profile as the powers a president has. So it's not quite the same thing, but also up here, when it comes to something like a divorce or something, there's very little interest in that.
It'd be the biggest thing ever.
Like if Biden were to get a divorce right now,
Or if Obama got a divorce, oh my God.
Like, I think, didn't somebody once mention that Fetterman was getting a divorce or something? Like, well, you have a lot of the right wingers. Like, what is it, Lauren Boebert? Or
Yeah, I don't know if that was her husband or not. Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, she's
did
getting
she
a
get
divorce.
or was it the other one?
No.
The blonde
Yeah,
one.
Margie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, she got a
Yeah,
divorce
she
and
got a
did the
divorce.
whole thing in the Beetlejuice.
Right. That was Robert.
Oh, it was,
Yeah,
to
that
me,
was
those
Robert.
two are interchangeable. They're the same
You're
person.
you're right. You're right. But if a president was getting a divorce, that'd be a
Mhm.
big deal.
Yeah. No, he got a divorce. It wasn't that long ago. So while he was prime minister, and it made the news, but it was quickly just brushed aside like nobody cared. It's his personal life, whatever. Like there weren't, as far as I know, there weren't media sources trying to pry into the intimate details as to why or anything of that sort, or oh, what's the custody like, or what's the payment or alimony or something.
Oh,
There was none of that. Because like he went to the movies with his kids not too long ago, which he posted about, and he did like he is very good at trolling. Because having a picture of his son with his son outside of Barbie, he knew how the right wing would respond to it. But he did it
right.
just so innocently and smugly, like I'm just here with my son, knowing full well it set off the right. But then taking his daughter to Oppenheimer. Um, so yeah, but really, again, didn't care.
Must be nice because these people here, oh my goodness,
Uh,
we wouldn't hear the end of it. I feel like well, not Trump, he's a little different, but
mhm.
like somebody running for office, like if they were probably gonna win, if they got a divorce, like you're done. Like you're done, dude. Like,
Mhm.
no. It's
Yeah.
way too conservative here, and it's just like so much like into a scandal. Yeah, no way.
Mhm. A little bit more on these stories, though, from Rachel Gilmore. She does a lot of coverage on Twitter of Canadian news. Good person to follow. So it looks like Global News managed to sneak some layoffs under the radar amid the fury of Bell's disgusting cuts. Meanwhile, the CEO of Chorus Entertainment, which owns Global, made $4.4 million in 2021
Wow.
because somebody's saying that they got laid off, cut from Global News as well during all of this. So just absolutely devastating time to be. And the thing is that there's nowhere for them to go. Like there aren't equivalent jobs somewhere else in the market really that are available for 4,800 people. And so people who have been there for so long, now they have to go find a minimum wage job somewhere that doesn't pay nearly enough to keep up with the cost of living anywhere in this country.
Mm.
The Beaverton, the Canadian version of the Anyang, had some fun with this. Rogers can't fucking believe they're the lesser evil telecom giant. Which
That's
is
a good one.
for us Canadians, yeah, we feel that. As well as they also did this. Bell cuts 48 jobs to create more participants for next Bell Let's Talk Day.
There it is, right there. That's the joke.
Yeah. Oh, just it's like a lot of people just don't think like where are these people going to go after this?
Well,
We
apparently,
don't have
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
we don't have a job market the same as it used to be. Like to get a normal job these days is nearly impossible. Applying for jobs is a whole other thing. Like I cannot get a normal job anymore. It is impossible. Like literally impossible. Nobody will hire me. I can't get through the application process because I never finished college. And so all these online applicants where they say check this box for highest education, okay, my resume gets screened before it ever sees human eyes. Like it's so impossible to just find a job that you can rely on these days that's going to treat you okay, that's going to pay your worth.
Mhm.
And we only have Bell and Rogers that are the equivalent type thing. So unless Rogers willing to pick up the slack for these people, which they're not, just like when Doug Ford gets rid of jobs here, like he recently closed a whole bunch of Service Ontario, which is where you go to get your license renewed or health card and like government official ID. He sold he closed a whole bunch of them because they're being opened up in Staples.
What?
So you can go to Staples. I think it's also in
Okay.
America. You guys
Yeah.
have Staples. Yeah, so you
Huh.
can go there to get your health card renewed
Interesting.
and buy some
Okay.
stationery while you're at it.
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to privatize it, try to make money from it. But the thing is that the Service Ontario locations, some of them were privately owned. Like they're publicly run, but they're privately owned. So some of them were family businesses for quite some time. And so they
Mm.
just lost their jobs, their income. But it's like, oh, well, we've worked in something that Staples will probably hire you at minimum wage.
Right.
Just,
More bullshit.
well, I wanted to get onto something I find a little bit more fun and lighter to talk about, devastating hurricanes. But before I do that, let's check the sandbox. So reminder to people that somebody did do the kind thing of looking up the last time Judy Gould was on the Majority Report, and apparently it was near the end of September. So before the October 7th thing. So yeah, because I don't know. It'd be very awkward, I think, to have her on now. And you know what? Quite honestly, I'm fine if Sam is just quietly not going to be inviting her on anymore. Like
Yeah.
if she's just blacklisted, she's not coming on anymore. I'm fine with that level of, again, because it is a personal issue, and I don't. Yeah, I don't feel right watching people have to put their personal stuff on stage for people to see. But man, would I ever love to see a debate between him and Ben Glebe. I would just, that is, I would pay money I don't have to see that. Let's see, because I have such an amazing chat that they would go and look that up for me. Let's see. Somebody said 100% Sandy, so I'm just going to say that's everything. Bad Lefty said that to me. So he's just agreeing with everything. Soul Life, she was one of the people that got the Tickle Me Elmo before it blew up, and she kept it across her room because she was afraid to sleep with it since it was... Soul Life, I have no idea what you're talking about there. I do remember the Tickle Me Elmo phase.
That was huge.
Mm-hmm. Grand Theft Autobot. Right-wingers can't accept mental trauma or illness. They have few emotions and very little empathy towards others, so it doesn't surprise me Greenwald is belittling Wheaton for his take.
Yeah, well, Glenn Greenwald is just a massive asshole, like that other person said, and useless and a grifter. And yeah, I don't pay attention to him anymore.
Looney Tunes 9000. Sir, I'm going to have to read your message like this. Bell? More like fell. Huh? Let's see. People talking about Jank because we brought up Anna, so of course.
Is he still running? Is he still in the race?
As far as I know, yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, no, I have thoughts about that too. None of them good. Again, it's one of the things, if he wants to run for president and use his own time, resources, money to have at it, but when he is asking people for money for his presidential campaign, when he can't qualify to run, to me, that is fraud.
I would agree with that.
Like, I'm not in favor of that rule down in the States, that you have to be a naturally born citizen or something. I'm against that. And if he were to run a campaign specifically to overturn that rule, I'm fine with that as well. But to tell people he's running for president before he's not qualified to do that, like he can't legally do that, to me, that's fraud. And just absolutely gross that he would get a lot of his, membership and people who maybe don't even have much money to donate to a campaign that never has any chance of existing. And he's not even doing it like it's not even a message campaign.
Not really, no.
Because what's his message so far other than he should be able to run? And he hasn't even done that. Like he hasn't even made that into a case of this rule needs to go. It is just, he's just trying to raise money in the grossest way possible. Let's see. And then he's trying to whine and claim victim. Oh, this state won't have me on the primary ballot or won't allow me in the debate or something. It's like, well, lots of people don't qualify for lots of different reasons. Human Without Borders. Did Trudeau just roast Doug to his face? Kind of. Again, Trudeau is very good at those subtle. I like that. There's lots of reasons why I disagree with him, and I called him a privileged, entitled prick, and he is. And he's very elitist, very neoliberal, very smug. He lies and all that sort of stuff. But there are some things about him that, you know what? I can appreciate those subtle digs. I can appreciate that. I appreciate it. Even though these words are hollow and empty, I do appreciate that he made that statement, especially in front of Doug Ford. Just like I do appreciate the statements he made about Alberta and their anti-trans policy that they're trying to push through. He also made statements against New Brunswick when they did the same with their school and the potential for outing trans kids to their parents. He also made a statement after that, and I appreciate that. And that is something I do actually sincerely think he is on board with, like he agrees with. But every time I've seen him do a performative thing for Indigenous peoples, it just kneeling at the grave, giving a teddy bear or something like that, just crying a tear. That,
Yeah, no.
that makes me mad.
Even hearing that is cringy.
Because all of the policies, the fact that he takes the survivor of residential schools to court, and then even when it's ruled in the favor of the survivors, he's appealing it with taxpayer money, fighting people not getting the medical services that they're supposed to get, Indigenous peoples not getting their medical services, and he's fighting back against that, and just all of the things when it comes to Indigenous peoples. But he's never going to push back on that because his daddy was prime minister when there were still over 60 residential schools running, and who would be, kind of, if they were to do a actual investigation into genocide into Canada, that would tarnish the family name. Just a bit. But the short of it is, I would much prefer to have Justin in than Pierre Poilievre.
Have Justin than who?
Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of the Conservative Federal Party.
Oh, okay.
And he is trying to have the charisma of Justin, but so cannot pull it off. Oh my God. He's so uncharismatic. But he's playing that populist vibe. He's pulling people from the NDP. And I know a lot of leftists saying, once he gets out there and talks, people are going to turn away from him. And I'm like, no, they're going to look past the fact that he's completely uncharismatic. And he stands a good chance, polling wise right now, he would win. And the type of policies and stuff that he would try to put through, devastating. Okay. FG says, white French guys all look the same. Bam, no worries.
Oh, when I said him and Macron.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Let's get on to
Hurricanes.
hurricanes. You see, this is my special interest as an autistic person. Natural disasters, something that I loved growing up as a kid. Like, that sounds really horrible. I love the natural disasters, fascinated by them. And I think it stemmed when I was a kid and I heard about what tornadoes were and terrified me. And so, almost as a way to combat that terror, was to start learning about it. And then anything natural disaster related. Like, I'm not as up to date now as I was at one point, so I can't quote like all the biggest things and all the terms and tech and stuff, but I still like diving into it from time to time. My favorite genre of movie, natural disaster slasher flicks, as I call them. So you got your Armageddon, you got your 2012, you got Greenland and Geostorm. Oh my God.
What was
San Andreas.
Deep Impact? I don't know if a comment counts. But
Yeah. Deep Impact and Armageddon came out at pretty much the same time.
yeah.
Same movie, same time.
I guess the latest one that I can think of is Don't Look Up.
Yeah, I watched that one too. Although that one I don't really call it. It's not a natural disaster movie in the
Yeah,
sense
not
of,
exactly.
But I love natural disasters movies. But I also love how absolutely absurd they are. And how
Yeah.
I can sit there in the theater and be like, well, actually, a tsunami will look more like this, and it doesn't actually happen like that, and you wouldn't get that high in that location. You wouldn't actually get a tsunami like that in that, because when you think of San Andreas, that's a slip fault. You have to go up a little bit further north where you get the subduction zone, and then you might be able to get a tsunami.
Well, that's better than me watching video. I mean, I don't know why I'm admitting this, but like watching videos of like the tsunamis like actually happen, like the videos from like Indonesia and Japan and stuff.
Oh, I watch them.
Okay. Well, we're both
Okay.
terrible.
Yeah. No, it is just horrifying nature and stuff, and it's devastating, but I've watched so much of it just to see that raw power and how insignificant we are as people when it comes to the power of Mother Nature. Like,
Yeah.
speaking of insignificant, Category 6 hurricanes are already here. So some scientists say Category 5 is not enough to describe the monster storms that have battered US in recent years. And here's the thing about hurricanes is they're going to keep on getting worse and worse and worse with global warming, because the
Right.
warmer ocean temperatures actually can cause hurricanes to get worse because they feed off of the warmer water. Now, here are some, I'm going to geek out a little bit. So when we start talking about the sea rising and stuff from the melting glaciers and stuff, scientists were alarmed because the sea's rising a lot faster and higher than they thought it would. And part of that is what they didn't take into consideration at first, which I'm now realizing, is warmer water expands. So when you get the warmer water on top of the melting glaciers, you're going to get much, much higher sea rising levels. And when you have these hurricanes then that are much more powerful hitting areas with the water that's been rising, you're going to get devastating consequences. But as this article kind of gets into, it's not, the categories of hurricanes aren't necessarily important.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. So a super hurricane is brewing. Okay. So in the real world, Category 5 is synonymous with the biggest and baddest storms. But some of U.S. scientists are making the case that no longer captures the intensity of recent hurricanes. A paper published Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences lays out the framework. And so basically, they're basing this on wind speed, and they're mentioning also the pitfalls of adding a new category is then people will think, oh, well, if there's a category worse than 5, then maybe 5 isn't that bad and we can write it out at home.
Right.
And does this have the graph or do I have to show the video? Okay, so from the Weather Network, something I watch. They have this little video here.
You've probably seen some headlines recently talking about whether we need a Category 6 hurricane added to the Saffir-Simpson scale. So this isn't a new idea, but the discussion stems from some research that was just published, and it proposes that tropical systems with wind over 192 miles per hour be classified as a Category 6 rather than a Category 5, which...
So Category 1, damage, some. Category 2, damage, extensive. Category 3, damage, devastating. Category 4, 5, and 6, catastrophic. And that's part of the reason why I'll compare it to the tornado scale in just a moment. But like the F1 to 5 scale, basically it stops at F5 because after that you can only devastate the land so much.
Right, right.
And that's what it's getting at. Like at F5, like it doesn't really matter how much higher the wind speed is, everything's wiped out. So then does it matter? And so now they're saying, well, we're getting these massive hurricanes. You're getting hurricanes with like tornado speed winds at this point.
Right.
Which
big tornadoes.
Yeah. Like keep in mind this is the lowest ratings of tornadoes, and we'll compare that, so you'll see in just a moment.
Starts at 157 miles per hour and then is pretty open-ended after that. So the researchers found that 5 out of 197 Category 5 and equivalent storms since 1980 would meet the criteria of this new Category 6. But to clarify, none of those 5 were storms that hit the U.S. And that 197 number includes not just hurricanes, but typhoons and cyclones from all around the world.
So hurricanes, because typhoons and cyclones are just a different name for a hurricane. They're just in different parts of the world, but it's the same type of storm. Sorry, just gotta say that. The only thing is the location and the way that they spin, depending if it's hitting the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere. It will spin in a different direction.
So the argument is that since climate change is contributing to stronger storms, there might be a need for a new top-end category going forward. Now, it is really important to remember that the Saffir-Simpson scale of categorizing these tropical cyclones does not account for threats from water, just wind speed. And studies have shown only 8% of hurricane deaths are due to wind. More than 80% are from water, storm surge, and flooding.
And that's why the category system for hurricanes right now, not necessarily that's significant. Because it's the hurricanes, like, what was it? Like a lot of hurricanes, like Hurricane Sandy that hit New York. Shout out to me. Spelt my name wrong. Caused massive devastation, but that's because of a whole bunch of other underlying things, like how the sea level is to the land, the type of infrastructure within the coastal area, you know, how much water can it absorb, the runoff from the rain, you know, is it hitting during a high tide? Like that makes a huge difference. And that's where a lot of the vast majority of the death comes from, is from the water. Whereas with a tornado, the death and damage is usually always because of the wind. But with hurricanes, it's so rare. And that's why they're like, is there really, like, do we just need to figure out a completely new way of categorizing hurricanes? Because if you say, oh, it's a category 3, but then it's going to hit somewhere like New Orleans.
Right.
You know, which could, you know, you break the levees and it's devastation upon devastation. You know, it depends on so many other factors.
So the concept has kind of been a hot topic with a lot of meteorologists who argue that adding an additional hurricane category could make people take Category 5 storms less seriously, and that the addition wouldn't help communicate the full scope of impacts.
Yeah, so I'll just jump back to this article because I think it was saying a little bit more about that. So the pitfalls of adding a new category. It's becoming clear that flooding is the deadliest aspect of a hurricane. Storm surges account for roughly half the deaths from hurricanes in the United States, and flooding from heavy rain is responsible for more than a quarter, according to the study. By contrast, high winds are behind just 8% of deaths. Since the Stafford-Simpson scale is based solely on the speed winds, it doesn't communicate the risk that people should be most concerned about. Yet it's the main thing people usually know about an oncoming storm. So that's important to know. Is you have to look at the land you're on, you have to look at the runoff, you have to look at all these different things, like how sturdy the buildings are, and all that sort of stuff when it comes to making a new category of hurricane. But the reality is, and I think the biggest significant point is, they're getting worse.
Right. Well, as someone who lived through a hurricane last August, Hurricane Hillary, which was apparently a Category 4, but I'm sure it wasn't Category 4 where, like here, um, it was kind of like I don't remember ever like they're saying there's going to be a hurricane over here, like in Southern California. So when they said that we're going to have a hurricane, I mean,
Mhm.
I would spend a lot of summers on the East Coast and then in the South, and we would get like the tail end of hurricanes in Virginia and stuff. Um, but yeah, here definitely people were really scared because they're like you're what, a hurricane in Southern California? But it ended up not really being that serious. It just rained. Um, there was damage and stuff, like some flooding of certain areas. Kind of like more on the desert. There was a lot, but it wasn't really that bad. I feel like last week we had more rain actually than we did during that hurricane.
Yeah, there's so many factors into making a hurricane devastating, but a lot of the reasons why hurricanes can be so devastating is man-made. It's the infrastructure, the poor infrastructure, it's the
Right,
economy, it's the fact that the people living with the least are in areas that are going to get hit,
right,
and they don't have the places to go, they don't have the shelter, they don't have the means to rebuild even.
right.
And people living in basement apartments, the cheapest places that are just, if you don't know it's coming on time, like a flash flood or something like that, and you're in a basement apartment. So many things go into this that people just don't think about, but it's the people with less, people with disabilities that get hurt the most by these sorts of things. And we have to think about how we rebuild cities, because right now they just rebuild. They don't take into consideration, maybe we should rebuild to withstand this type of thing, or to help mitigate the destruction that this would cause. Because there are ways of building cities and towns and stuff to help absorb the water, to help funnel the water, to make buildings more sturdy. Like there's so much that can be done, but we're simply not doing it. We're not changing our infrastructure to meet the climate change demands that are coming our way.
Yeah. I I guess this is a little off topic, but this is a natural disaster. The big earthquake they had in Syria and Turkey, I want to say that was last year or about like a year ago. They I was watching a thing and they were doing like a they like went back to the region. They were like talking to some of the people that experienced that earthquake. And most of them were just they're like, we're scared that it's going to happen again,
Mhm.
like because things haven't been rebuilt or they have been rebuilt the same. Um, if we get another earthquake like that, it's just the exact same thing is going to happen again. Um, I remember some years back there was a earthquake in Turkey, and I can't remember exactly where this one was. I want to say it was like closer to Istanbul, but there was a lot of damage and a lot of people died, and they were gonna sue the people that built those buildings because they're just like building them really fast and they're not really like up to code necessarily. And yeah, a lot of people that survived were like, yeah, this is bullshit. We're not going to be like living in these places that we know we get earthquakes here. And if we get an earthquake, everything's just going to be shattered. There's definitely got to be infrastructure built in a way to withstand these things.
Mhm.
We get earthquakes here. I feel like it was about 10 years ago now, almost. There was like a couple weeks we're just getting like earthquake after earthquake. I want to say like we got like one big one and then just aftershock after aftershock for
Mhm.
like days. And there wasn't a lot of damage, every time I've felt an earthquake, half the time you don't feel them, but like every time I felt one, like the most that's happened is something falls down off a dresser.
Mhm.
And sometimes they say like, "Oh, it was a 5." Like, oh shit, that's pretty big. Now, I'm not inviting the big one. I'm
Mhm.
not inviting San Andreas or 2012 earthquake. I'm not inviting that. Sandy might like watching that footage, but
Uh, you're overdue, but you're overdue for the big one. But you just got me thinking about this. It was on reposted on Twitter recently. The worst idea ever. Earthquake beds. Ah! That was super loud.
so when there's vibrations, we can.
Let's see. Actually,
Oh, okay. So you're just gonna go fall into your
this is
coffin.
like nightmare fuel. Like,
End up
yeah,
in your coffin.
you just end up in a coffin. Let's see. Did
Right.
I? So
The
let's.
exterior of the box is covered with a layer of
Let's do
fireproof
that.
material. Don't worry. Whoever invented the earthquake bed was a genius. It doesn't look any different than a regular bed, but when there's a big earthquake, the vibrations will be captured by the bed's high-precision sensors, and then the person and the mattress fall into this big box. All this will be done quickly before the house collapses. The case is made of high-strength alloy steel, and is supported by a number of solid steel. Normal wall collapses can't harm it. The bottom of the crate contains not only a large amount of food and water, as well as firefighting and medical supplies. With side vents, there's no need to worry about oxygen deprivation. The exterior of the box is covered with
Yes, there is. There is. Where do you go pee? Is there a toilet in this? There's just. This is like night. Like you're just basically in a coffin and you'll die a slower death.
Right.
In hopes that maybe somebody finds you
with a
first.
layer of fireproof material. Don't worry if there's a fire outside.
No, because that vent you mentioned.
Right, exactly. Like, have you heard of smoke?
It can even send a distress signal to the outside world.
But
it
apparently
can
you-
even send a distress signal to the outside. There's no need to worry about oxygen deprivation. The exterior of the box is covered with a layer of fireproof material. Don't worry if there's a fire outside. It can even send a
Comfortable
distress signal to
temperature.
the outside world, so that the rescue team can find it at the first time. Meanwhile, there are many styles of earthquake beds to choose from. In addition to the regular box, there are also lifting models, sliding models, double doors open models. Even the gullwing doors on cars are fitted with it. So do you think this earthquake bed can save your life in the event of an earthquake?
No.
Could you imagine though? You're just invite someone over, or you go over to someone's house and you get it going, and then it's really hot, and you go
Right.
and you start playing. When the bed goes a rocking.
You're right. I'm like, how do they know the difference? Like, your hand gets caught in the freaking thing.
There is so much wrong with this, and it's like, again, it's like people with a lot of money, the billionaires in their bunkers and stuff, trying to like, instead of doing anything to solve the problems, like maybe build infrastructure that could withstand earthquakes or better withstand earthquakes. No, just for rich people to have these little toys and tools to make them feel a little bit safer.
Hopefully there's a camera inside so we can see what happens with this person.
Yeah, so a little bit more geeky stuff. So the National Hurricane Center in I wanted it in kilometers for my Canadian audience. So, types of damages due to hurricane winds. And so the category 1, so this is in miles and kilometers for people to see, and even knots. So up to 153 kilometers an hour. Very dangerous winds will produce some damage. Well-constructed frames homes could have damage to roofs, shingles, vinyls. So extensive damage to power lines, poles, trees down, that sort of thing. Then the category 2, so that's 154 to 177 kilometers. Extremely dangerous winds cause extensive damage. Well-constructed homes. So more damage to roofs. Many shallow-rooted trees will be snapped or uprooted, and blocks numerous roads, making it harder for supplies and relief to get in. Also important for anyone, because there's been a lot of downbursts and storms that cause trees to go down around most areas. If you see a tree down across a road and you think to yourself, I have a chainsaw and I have an axe, so I'm going to go clear that myself, do not do that. No, you are not a professional. Don't do it. What a lot of people don't realize is you need a professional to come out and clear that tree properly, because if you cut a certain branch in a certain way and you don't know where a tension point is, you can have something snap up suddenly and kill you. And this happens because if you just relieve that pressure somewhere, or you take the strain off of something, you'll have a branch just suddenly snap out and spring out and you're dead. So do not do that yourself, because it will not end well. So near total power loss, and then you get the category 3 up to 208 kilometers. Many trees will be snapped. The electricity and water might be unavailable for days to weeks after the storm passes. And then you get into so 3, 4, and 5 are considered major, because it's, and the worst types of storms we get up here, you can have winds to 80 to 100 kilometers. So it's under hurricane strength, but it's not that far away. And a downburst. So a downburst is kind of like a tornado, only more vertical. It goes in. So it's basically the winds just kind of like crash down and spill out at really high speeds, and so those cause a lot of damage and stuff. So then you get up to the major category 5, so up to 250 kilometers, which from homes will severe damage, loss of most roofs, most trees will be uprooted, poles, fallen trees, power lines, power outages. So that's the other problem with water and power. You can get electrocuted really easily. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks or months. And then the major category 5. So right now it's at 252, or that's 157 miles. So 252 kilometers or higher. A high percentage of framed homes will be destroyed with total roof failure and wall collapse. Fallen trees and power poles will isolate residential areas. Power outages will last for weeks, possibly to months. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks or months.
Well, we'll pray for those. Those things are happening in like islands in the Indian Ocean and stuff like that. Like,
the Pacific Islands tend to get hit really hard.
And some of the Caribbean, the last hurricane that was really big, some of the Caribbean got hit really bad too.
So if we go over here to the Fujita scale, the tornadoes, so you have 0 to 5. And so you look at some of the most violent tornadoes over 322 kilometers. So pretty much at that point, it's everything's gone. It doesn't matter. You can make a higher scale. It doesn't matter. Everything's gone.
Right.
But there's crossover speed winds. So you can have hurricanes with tornado speed winds. And also hurricanes tend to have offshoot satellite tornadoes throughout as well. So just absolutely devastating. And so they start So tornadoes can start at like 65 miles per hour to 85 miles per hour. But then kilometers, that's 105 to 137. So the violent F5, it's 200 miles per hour. And in Canada, it's greater than 322 kilometers. And so, like, that's more than 3 times highway speed.
Do you guys get many like tornadoes in like
Mhm.
the Midwest, Manitoba?
Tornado Alley comes up to Canada.
Okay.
I'm technically in Tornado Alley, but in my little pocket of area, I'm fine. Because there's a lot of hills and drumlins and areas and stuff from the glacier melt and stuff like that left us with lots of hilly areas and stuff. And tornadoes, it's not that they can't, but they're very less likely to develop when there's lots of hills. It needs
Right.
like flat areas and stuff. So outside of my area, there have been tornadoes, usually not terribly strong ones. And Ottawa actually has been hit a couple times, not in the past few years.
Interesting. Well,
So it's not as active here as it is in Tornado Alley in the United States, but Tornado Alley does extend up into this area.
yeah, I've never really experienced a real tornado. There have been some like baby ones here in Southern California. People say, "Oh, there's a tornado," but I'm like,
Well,
unless it's like the movie Twister, like
yeah.
I don't want to hear about it.
Because there's water spouts and then there's also dust devils that can get quite strong, but for the most part, they're not going to really cause any damage.
Right.
And even like the weakest tornadoes aren't necessarily that damaging per se, because, you know, we have regular storms with stronger wind speeds than, you know, like here you have 40 for the Gale tornado, 40 to 72 miles per hour. Or 73 to 112 miles per hour for an F1. And yeah, so the strongest, incredible tornado, as they say, strong frame houses lifted off foundations carry considerable distances to disintegrate. Automobile-sized missiles fly through the air in excess of 100 meters. Trees, oh, I love how they just throw in meters, even though they're using miles over here. Trees debarked, steel reinforced concrete structures badly damaged. And the thing about this in tornadoes is I covered a story not too long ago. There was a tornado in December.
Where at?
Montana, was it off the top of my head? I did a video on it. BY tornado. There was a baby was blown away but survived. Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee. Oh, I think I remember hearing about that actually.
And that was just I did a story on it. I even have it clipped on my channel, not doing well. So please go and check out my clips. But yeah, that's, you know, tornado season. There is an actual tornado season. It's not in December.
No.
Usually tornado season ends around the time hurricane season starts. It is wild. And of course, tornado season is going to increasingly get worse with climate change. Okay, so those were like the main stories I want to cover. So I'm just going to bring it back to the other screen. So people just hang on one moment. There we go. I hit all the buttons properly again this time. So, links to all of BAM stuff is in the description box below.
I don't even have any stuff.
Well, you have the We Made It podcast and the Power Report.
Oh gosh.
So there's links to that. Because that's the thing. I wanted to invite you onto my show for a while, but I'm like, you're not on Twitter that I know of. Like, I didn't know it was specifically you with the We Made It podcast Twitter
Oh yeah,
account and stuff. And that's part of the problem of trying to bring some people on is I have no way of actually reaching them.
that's me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then why do you do all this online content stuff if you don't want to be reached by online content people?
I mean, I'm down to do other people's shows, but I don't
Mhm.
want to like. I'm not really trying to build a profile personally like that.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want a bunch of people on Twitter and stuff. Like, I mean,
So this is your hobby.
I had a
Mhm.
personal Twitter that was like a political Twitter,
Mhm.
but I deleted it a couple years ago. Because I was just like, I can't do political Twitter anymore. I couldn't do it. So I just deleted it. And me and Caesar have been doing We Made a Podcast for a while. So I was just like, okay, I'll do that one.
You should
Mostly
go
talking.
back and see how he did on his Canadian test.
Oh yeah, you know what? I should. I was watching a bit, but I didn't see the
Mhm.
beginning.
Mhm.
Um, but so mostly I'm talking about soccer on Twitter. Every once in a while, there's a political tweet, but yeah, I just like political social media is just too frustrating.
Mhm.
I can hardly deal with it.
Yeah, well, one thing that I was thinking, like, we're not going to get into anything new other than our ramblings right now, but one thing I was thinking of covering is some of the comments I've been getting under my videos. Because it's just to me it's kind of fun to go over some of them and I find the way I get comments under certain videos hilarious. Uh, I did get one of my Marilyn Manson comments.
Okay.
People think I look like Marilyn Manson.
All right.
Sure. Yeah. Which, I don't find bothersome. I've been meaning to recover MAID, that's medical assistance in dying, because I got a lot of comments under that one
Mm.
and people upset. And it's like nobody, and I think one of the things that frustrates me about the comments is like it feels like nobody watches the goddamn video. Because it's like if you watch the video, you would know certain things, or like the comments in particular that I was thinking of covering was under one of the clips that I posted of me and Dan talking about men and how
Mm.
men are becoming more right wing or how we need to bring more men to the left and stuff. And some of the comments from men I find funny. Like they're
I
absurd.
I commented on the short of that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, there's some comments like I think they think they're being mean, but they're so absurd, it's funny. Like just one man saying like, "Oh, women are more emotionally based, like 60% are more emotionally based and blah blah blah, and this is why when women start voting then we get all this chaos and stuff." And it's like, "But you're on my comment section crying." So you're one of because men vote more logically and stuff, or another guy saying, "Oh, women prefer safety over freedom, whereas men prefer to be more individualistic." And it's like, okay, dumbass, who are women
What?
afraid of? Like, why is it that women seek safety and it's not over freedom? Let's put it that way.
Like it's like the women took away the right to abortion in this country.
Hmm.
Okay. And the whole trope about women being more emotional, one of the biggest lies ever told. I just am seeing a story about a guy who shot his girlfriend
Hmm.
or friend over a game of basketball.
Well,
She beat him in basketball and he shot her and killed her.
okay, Kavanaugh bawling his eyes out on his on the stand. Like, there's so many men out there, and again, I'm all for men having the ability to cry. But when you
Right.
see Jordan Peterson go to tears in the way he does, it's like,
Well, also, I think that the lie in it is
mhm,
that they don't include men's anger as an emotion.
mhm,
And like the amount of rage I've seen over the most like trivial things from men is like, you're not going to tell me that women are more emotional. Like, you're not.
Did you
Like,
see Did you see the comment? So Dan and I were going over Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson was in Alberta giving a speech about, the hordes coming to invade and take over. But at one point he says, like, all men can relate, they'd much rather have their wife hit them over the face with a 2x4 than laugh derisively at them when they come out of the shower.
Oh, jeez. Sounds like personal experience, by the way.
Yeah, and Dan's like, okay, so we're talking the therapy moment right now. But it's like, yeah, like the idea that men can get so upset at the thought of somebody laughing at them to the point that they will go into homicidal rage.
Yeah, and it's like, but that's not emotions though.
Mhm.
Like that's not emotional though. Like whatever that kid was in UC Santa Barbara or Santa Cruz, I forgot, who went on
Mhm.
this killing spree because girls don't want to talk
Yeah.
to him. Or the girl that he wants doesn't want, you know what I mean? Like it's like we're not looking at that as emotional. But if a woman cries
Mhm.
at a movie, oh, women are so emotional.
Yeah.
But like this guy goes on a killing spree, well, he needs help.
Yeah, like I've seen plenty of emotional men, and I've also seen men harmed by the fact that they can't show that emotion.
Right. And that's men's fault.
Mhm. Yeah. And then it's like, if you also look into the different categories, like me, I'm non-binary, so where exactly do I fall on that scale? And yeah, it's like, of course men are emotional,
Yeah, of
but it's
course.
because of like, oh, PMS, because the women, they have the PMS, and so then that makes them all. It's like, okay, it's not exactly not true. There's other underlying factors going on, but men have their own different type of hormonal cycles.
One of my sayings that I've been saying for a long time, and it's the sign that I bring to all protests, is male insecurity is the most dangerous force in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's it right there.
Yeah,
It can
I
all
can
be
see that.
boiled down to that. That's what you got to be scared of.
Yeah.
Male insecurity. That's what's going to get you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've seen there's been like times where a tweet will catch the fire, where it's a woman will tweet out, tell me what you would do in a world where all men were just gone for 24 hours. Like nothing bad happened to them. They were just, you're in a world right now and men are just gone for 24 hours. And the amount of women that would be like, I just would go over for a walk. Or go to the gym without having to worry, or be able to do this, or be able to live a normal life for 24 hours. So many women with their stories in there like that. And it's just, but women are the emotional ones.
The biggest lie ever told.
Yeah. Women need protection. From who?
Right.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we've been at it for like 3.5 hours.
We spent an hour talking about Canada and I loved it.
It's great. No, I don't mind because I'm actually very curious about what Americans think of Canada, like trying to get into the headspace so that I can correct them. So I know what to go after, it's one of the things, like it's hard for me to imagine what Americans think of Canada, but it doesn't seem to be too hard for Americans to imagine what Canadians think of Americans.
Hopefully they think we're idiots.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, good. That's a good, yeah. But I think that a lot of American people don't have much interaction with Canadians. And even like we have so many like Canadian actors and actresses, and like nobody thinks of Ryan Gosling as Canadian,
Well, the amount of people that don't even know David Dole is Canadian, it's kind of funny.
Most of them. Pamela Anderson's Canadian.
Yeah. Lance from the Surfs.
There we go.
The whole
we won't bring up Crowder though.
Yeah, the leftist mafia is almost like half Canadian run. They should have me on, so that would be like, Canuck versus Yank.
But yeah, I personally, I'm, really into geography and learning about different places. So I guess I'm like not your average American in that sense,
Well,
but I've known.
considering you got like pretty much all of the questions, definitely not the average American.
So yeah, like I've like been around Canadians and stuff like that. Like it's not like that crazy to me, but yeah, it is definitely. We need more cross-border
Okay.
interaction for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so let's just do a quick check of the sandbox. Lots of people saying thank you for coming on, that you are amazing, Bam, that they like you
You're
and they want to see
welcome.
more of you.
Okay, well,
Uh,
we can do that, hopefully.
yeah, a lot of people loving you. Uh, okay, and like I said, links to his stuff is in the description box below. Now, I was going to do where I usually just cut to me and then sign off, but let's just try it with you still on screen while I do my regular spiel while I try to cut off. I think I
Okay.
have all of the things I want in here. So you can check out my art at SandeeLovas.com. I delivered a picture to somebody who won the raffle for a portrait for somebody living with poverty because somebody donated over $500 to help towards Frodo's vet bills. Something that I still need help with. So let's switch that. So Frodo has eaten quite well the last couple days, and it's basically a day-by-day basis, but I still have to regularly now take him into the vet, even though it's a not-for-profit. It adds up. It adds up. So any help towards his vet bills, greatly appreciated. I have a link to PayPal, or for the Canadians, you can send an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com. Something you Americans really should get on, where you can just literally email money back and forth. But yeah, I'll be posting the drawing that I just did in the next little while. I also have that little video of the time lapse, which are so cool. Let's see. You can sign up to become a patron right up there. Well, not up there, but it's in the description box. Every little bit helps, but please only if you can. I know times are tough and a lot of people out there are struggling. So do what you can when you can. I also have an Amazon wish list with lots of different things on it for lots of, to help build this studio, to help with my art supplies, to treat my cats, or to even treat me, whichever. Again, every little bit helps. And let's see, how do I have my socials on here? And then I'll need to get rid of the art thing and then say, yeah, you can find me on these social medias. I'm still primarily on the hostile fart sauna known as Twitter. I'm on there way, way, way too much. But yeah, I'm in a bubble on there, so I'm protected from the worst of the worst because of the people that I tend to follow and stuff. So Twitter still isn't inhospitable to me yet, but it is pretty bad. And yeah, still lots of people loving all you do. And yep, check Bam out on the Power Report Thursday nights with Dan from the internet and other guest people. I imagine I'm going to get on again at some point. I've been on,
So.
and I'm sure I'll get on again sometime when you need the token Canadian. Okay. So with that, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.